Meet Eunsoo. She's jolted from her work by the sudden ring of her phone. A quick swipe later, she finds herself on the receiving end of her assistant manager's frantic voice, asking her where on earth she is. A wave of panic washes over her as she realizes she's missed the time for her evaluation. On my way, she assures him, leaping up from her chair and rushing to get ready. As she pulls on her dress, Eunsoo can't believe she's running late, especially on such an important day. Suddenly, a hand reaches out to her and she whirls around to find a man lounging on her bed. She's taken aback, her mind spinning as she tries to figure out who this unexpected guest might be. Bursting out of her apartment, Eunsoo blurts out that she's just ended things with her boyfriend. She's amazed at how quickly she's found herself in someone else's arms, but chalks it up to her own impulsive nature. As she sprints down the street, she sneaks a peek at her phone and sees 6 missed calls from her mom. She knows she's in for a scolding, but her work evaluation takes precedence for now. Eunsoo's ultimate dream? Landing a permanent position at her company. She's been working tirelessly towards this goal and today, it's finally paid off. Enter Jong Ji-won, the acting manager of the planning team, infamous for pawning off her work onto Eunsoo. Despite this, Ji-won saunters in with a congratulatory message for Eunsoo. To celebrate, Ji-won suggests they dine at the upscale W restaurant, conveniently forgetting just how pricey it is. It seems Eunsoo's victory comes with a rather costly asterisk. Worried about securing a reservation at the popular restaurant, Eunsoo shares her concerns. But Ji-won brushes it off, assuring her it's nothing to worry about. Why? Because Ji-won has connections, she promises to pull strings with the restaurant manager to get them a table. Next up is Tae Kyung, the team's newest member, who arrives with a coffee as a toast to Eunsoo's promotion. She thanks him with a smile, but deep down, she can't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. Tae Kyung has always had a certain charm and success that she admires. But Tae Kyung brings unexpected news: a new director is joining their department. The rumors surrounding this guy are nothing short of alarming. Eunsoo and Ji-won are quick to ask for more details, and Tae Kyung reveals that the incoming director is rumored to be a bit of a pervert and a psychopath. The word around town is that the new director is a party animal, often seen with multiple women. Apparently, he made his fortune by starting an investment company in the US. But the real kicker? He's a relentless workaholic, hardly ever sleeping. It seems the department is about to undergo some major changes. Eunsoo, however, takes the news in stride. She might have been worried before, but now that she's a full-time employee, bring it on. So, at the W restaurant, Eunsoo, Ji-won, and Tae Kyung are toasting to new beginnings. In between the clinking glasses and laughter, Tae Kyung wonders if they've gone a bit overboard with the restaurant choice. But Ji-won, oozing confidence, waves away his worries, declaring it's only fitting for Eunsoo's first day as a full-timer. Eunsoo reassures Tae Kyung not to sweat the cost. Meanwhile, Ji-won, with a sly grin, hints that Eunsoo must have gotten the promotion thanks to a glowing recommendation from their team, right? Eunsoo humbly thanks them for their support, but the moment takes a turn when Ji-won suggests ordering more food. Eunsoo, while nodding in agreement, secretly hopes Ji-won would choose some budget-friendly options. After all, she did mention she was on a diet, didn't she? As Eunsoo tucks into her luxe meal, she convinces herself that the price tag is worth it, especially with the stunning night view. But then, she spots a guy at another table who seems to be looking their way. Is he really checking her out? In a whisper, Ji-won leans in, revealing that the woman next to the guy is famous actress Shuli Na. Could it be that he's staring at Ji-won? Tae Kyung shrugs it off, suggesting the guy is just enjoying the view outside. As the dinner winds down, Eunsoo decides the guy was probably just admiring the view, but there's something familiar about him. As her friends get ready to leave, she tells them to go ahead and she'll catch up later. Tae Kyung, confused, wonders if she's not leaving with them. Eunsoo assures him she'll follow soon, she just wants to take a few pictures of the night sky. With a casual "see you at work," he leaves, and Eunsoo takes a moment alone to drink in the stunning night view. Suddenly, the guy who was looking their way approaches Eunsoo, declaring he's finally found her. She shoots back, asking what he wants from her. He wasn't sure at first because of her glasses, he admits. Confused, she asks if they know each other, because she doesn't recognize him. Unfazed, he confesses he's been thinking about her for a while and is pretty sure they've met before. Taking a seat, he promises to explain later, saying he's in a hurry. Then, out of nowhere, he suggests they should sleep together. Eunsoo chokes on her drink, coughing uncontrollably. She quickly covers her mouth, thinking, is this guy for real? Her gut tells her to get out of there, fast. Heart pounding, Eunsoo grabs her bag and tries to slip away unnoticed. But before she can escape, he catches her, asking if she's trying to run from him. Memories come flooding back when he mentions, that night, May 30th at Club J. Stunned, she whispers to herself, it can't be him. Flashback to 3 months ago, Eunsoo is at a restaurant, nursing her drink as she vents to her friend. How could he dump her after everything she's done for him over the past 3 years? They were supposed to have stable jobs by now and be planning their wedding, but she's still stuck in Templand. He must think she's a lost cause. Eunsoo's buddy gives her a pep talk, reminding her that even as a temp, she's got a job and she's always been self-reliant. She never relied on him for her basic needs, and they've always split the bills. But Eunsoo can't help but admit that the whole situation is driving her up the wall. With a playful jab, Eunsoo tells her friend she sounds like the one who just got dumped. As she reflects on their past, she realizes that splitting the bills was just the beginning. She did way more for him than that. She footed the bill for all his bar exam prep materials while he was busy studying. It hits her how much she invested in their relationship. Despite her best efforts to keep their relationship afloat, it feels like all she's done has been in vain. The breakup blindsided her, leaving her feeling hollow and numb. Overcome with sadness, she can't hold back the tears any longer. Her friend tries to comfort her, reassuring Eunsoo that she'll find someone better soon. She encourages Eunsoo to forget about him and enjoy the night. Eunsoo agrees, downing a few more sips of her drink, and declares that tonight, she's going to let loose. With renewed resolve, she decides to party like there's no tomorrow. That's the spirit, her friend cheers. But then she adds that Eunsoo can't hit the town looking like this. With a devilish grin, she whips out her makeup kit, proudly declaring herself the makeover queen. She promises to give Eunsoo a stunning transformation for the night. She tells Eunsoo to ditch the glasses that have become her safety shield. Teasingly, she suggests Eunsoo consider LASIK surgery, because what's the point of wearing makeup if she's just going to cover it up with glasses? Eunsoo admits she can't afford LASIK right now, but once she lands a regular job, it's definitely on her list. Her friend agrees, complimenting Eunsoo's lovely eyes and lamenting how they're wasted behind those glasses. Looking at her handiwork, her friend is confident that men will be lining up to ask Eunsoo out now. Surprised, Eunsoo responds with a playful, "Really? Maybe I should go snag a few then." But her friend reminds her that she didn't even do overnight trips with her ex-boyfriend and warns her about potential regrets. Unfazed, Eunsoo declares she won't regret anything. She reminds her friend of the wild night they promised. Envisioning a future where she's a permanent employee, gets LASIK, and casually flirts with guys, Eunsoo is excited. Her friend, caught up in the moment, embraces her, promising this will be a night they'll never forget. Over at Club J, the mysterious guy sits uncomfortably with a friend, grimacing at the noise. His friend suggests he take sleeping pills since he hasn't slept in 2 days. But the guy dismisses it, claiming they don't work for him anymore. Frustrated, he slumps onto the couch, wishing for a good night's sleep. Meanwhile, the club is buzzing with energy as partygoers let loose. Amidst the crowd, Eunsoo walks in, her excitement clear as day. With a groan, he rises from his seat, massaging his temples to soothe the throbbing headache. The loud music isn't doing him any favors. His friend objects, reminding him the gang's almost here. But he dismisses it with a casual wave of his hand, suggesting his friend could keep them entertained. He makes his way out of their private lounge, grumbling under his breath about his regret for coming and longing for some much-needed sleep. Just as he turns a corner, he bumps into Eunsoo. She's clearly been enjoying the evening a little too much, her words slurring as she boldly proposes they spend the night together. He arches an eyebrow in surprise, questioning if she's had a few too many. She stumbles into him, he catches her reflexively, wondering why people insist on overdoing it with alcohol. Eunsoo clings to him, noting how warm he feels. He realizes she's not planning on letting go anytime soon. Unexpectedly, he feels a comforting sensation, a feeling he hasn't experienced before. He asks if she came with someone, to which she shrugs nonchalantly, claiming she doesn't remember. Concerned, he offers to drive her home. She vehemently disagrees, insisting he should stay with her instead. In no time, they find themselves in a hotel room. Eunsoo flops onto the bed, marveling at its coziness. He checks on her, asking if she's feeling better. She responds by shaking her head no, and he reassures her not to worry about the cost. He suggests she can stay if she needs to, adding that he'll leave. She quickly grabs his shirt, insisting he sticks around. She brings up his sleep troubles, proposing they sleep together, the reason she brought him here. As they settle onto the bed, she reveals it's a significant day for her, the day she ended things with her boyfriend. The clubbing was her way of trying to move on. Caught in his thoughts, he realizes how soothing her voice is, like a lullaby. It amazes him how such a sweet tone can make him feel so sleepy. As Eunsoo drifts off, he observes her sleeping peacefully. He mumbles to himself about her being an interesting woman, finding it oddly comforting just watching her sleep. He thinks about how soft her skin looks and wonders if it's okay to touch her. But he quickly shakes his head, blaming his sleep-deprived state for having such thoughts. Eunsoo senses his restlessness and scoots closer, wrapping her arms around him. She offers to sing him a lullaby, and as she starts singing, he recognizes the tune. It's the same one his mom used to sing when he was a kid. They both fall into a peaceful slumber. Back in the present, Eunsoo finally realizes who he is. He grins, confessing it's a night he'll never forget. She quickly jumps in, worried that people might misunderstand if they heard him say that. She clarifies that nothing happened between them that night. His smile fades as he questions her statement, emphasizing that they did share a bed. Internally, she wonders if he thinks they're supposed to get married because they slept together. He opens up about his chronic insomnia and how, on that particular night, he had the deepest sleep in years. As she hesitates, he insists it's the truth. He admits that somehow, her presence had a calming effect on him, allowing him to experience peaceful sleep. He brings up the subject of sleep again, but this time, his tone is more desperate. She jumps in her seat, taken aback by his sudden plea. He spills the beans about his insomnia, confessing it's been an agonizing 3 months since he last slept. He promises to cover all her bills, practically begging her to help him get some shut-eye. She squints at him suspiciously, trying to figure out if he's messing around or being serious. He admits he's being overly nice, because he needs something from her. As she mulls it over, she can't help but think about the hefty dinner bill she's going to have to pay tonight. Seeing her contemplative look, he grins and asks if she's reconsidering his proposition. She nods, agreeing to help him, but she has one condition. He raises an eyebrow, curious about her condition. She tells him they have to sleep somewhere in plain sight, where others can see them. Baffled, he asks her to explain further. Internally, she's sure he's going to back out now. Like here, he suggests, glancing around their current location. She laughs it off, calling his idea ridiculous and insisting that sleeping here would be impossible. In her mind, she grumbles about how stubborn he's being and wonders why he won't just refuse already. She pulls out her phone, looking for a suitable place to sleep that's public enough to deter any funny business. When she finds a place, she shares her choice with him, proposing they head there. He offers to fetch his car, but she declines, saying there isn't any parking available. Instead, she suggests they walk, assuring him it'll be fine. They arrive at Refresh Sauna, and he looks at the establishment skeptically. She confirms it's the right place and asks if he's okay with it. Internally, she thinks the place is even worse than the reviews suggested and expects him to bail. But to her surprise, he shrugs and says it'll do. Inside, Eunsoo hands him a set of clothes and a towel for indoor use. She tells him to go change. He grimaces at the outfit, questioning if he really has to wear it. She insists that it's mandatory and adds that they can always leave if he's uncomfortable. Reluctantly, he takes the clothes, grumbling under his breath, and heads off to change. Eunsoo watches him leave, a tinge of pity in her eyes. She figures he must be really desperate to agree to this. However, she's confident he won't try anything inappropriate in such a public place. Later, she's comfortably situated, sipping on a traditional Korean sweet rice drink called siki and munching on boiled eggs. She's dressed in her own sauna outfit, wondering aloud why he's taking so long. Suddenly, there's a commotion, and she turns to find him looking surprisingly dapper in his outfit. She can't help but admire his fit physique, wondering if he's into sports. He comes over and apologizes for the delay, explaining he had an important call. She teases him about almost leaving because he took so long. He asks what's next, and she suggests he unwind a little, reminding him there's no rush. As he settles down, his gaze unintentionally lands on her smooth legs. He comments on her lack of body hair, catching Eunsoo off guard. He clarifies, saying he noticed how smooth her skin is. Realizing what he meant, she wonders if he saw her naked that night. Apart from her scalp, she doesn't have hair anywhere else on her body, a condition that has always made her self-conscious. It's a type of hair loss called atrichia. He asks if she's sensitive about her lack of body hair. She starts to tell him not to mention it again, but he interrupts her, admitting he did notice. Suddenly, everything clicks in her mind. Could that be the real reason he approached her? Was his insomnia story just a cover-up? She's filled with questions as she ponders this new revelation. Eunsoo takes a moment to digest the surreal situation she's found herself in, all because he footed her dinner bill. Suddenly, a wave of frustration washes over her, and she slaps him. Caught off guard, he rubs his cheek, looking at her in confusion. He reminds her that he was seeking help to sleep, not a wake-up call. He quickly apologizes, realizing he might have hit a sore spot, but he can't help expressing his disbelief that it warranted a slap. She shoots back, raising her voice, accusing him of claiming to have seen everything. He quickly interjects, clarifying that he only noticed her lack of body hair now, pointing out her smooth legs and arms. Feeling self-conscious, she covers her face, mumbling to herself about her decision to wear shorts. He tries to reassure her, emphasizing that he only needs her help to sleep and she has nothing to worry about. Wanting to lighten the mood, Eunsoo casually stretches out her siki, offering him some. He politely declines, explaining he doesn't usually eat before bed. Keen to get this over with, he suggests they make their way to the sleeping room. She nods in agreement, pointing out the direction to the room. They step into the sleeping room a few moments later. Despite it being slightly messy and not entirely dark, it manages to exude a cozy vibe. He looks around, questioning if this is really it. Her response is a sigh of relief at his acceptance of the room. Internally, Eunsoo scolds herself for not turning him down earlier, but a part of her is still contemplating making a run for it. Meanwhile, he expresses his doubt about falling asleep now, especially after the surprise slap. Regardless, he figures they may as well try since they've come this far. As they settle in, he finds it hard to drift off, eventually sitting upright. Eunsoo jumps slightly, surprised at his sudden movement. She had assumed he was going to sleep. He stares at her legs for a moment, contemplating resting his head there. It seems like a comfortable spot where he could finally drift off. But instead, he flops back onto his bed, turning away. Eunsoo moves closer, commenting on his inability to fall asleep. He turns to look at her, accusing her of mocking him now. She fires back, arguing that his request didn't make sense from the start. Feeling like she's done enough to repay him for covering her bill, she decides it's time to leave. He sits up, expressing his annoyance at her assumption that she's done enough, reminding her of the still stinging slap on his cheek. She retorts, asking what more he expects from her. Then, she proposes singing a lullaby, an idea he admits might actually work. Internally, she wonders if he's completely oblivious to the awkward atmosphere. She reminds him they're not alone in the room. He shoots back that she was the one who brought up the idea. She instructs him to lie back down, then begins to pat him gently. Confused, he asks what she's doing. She explains that since she can't sing in this setting, she's patting him instead, hoping it will help him fall asleep. He's just about nodding off, thinking this isn't half bad. Suddenly, she stops and he can't help but ask if she's done. She playfully shoots back, asking if he wants more. He admits he was on the edge of dreamland, and she complains her arm is starting to feel like jelly. She throws a suggestion his way, why not get his restaurant girlfriend to do this? He counters, saying if that worked, he wouldn't be here, would he? She sighs dramatically, claiming exhaustion. But then, he drops a bombshell. There's a simpler way, he says, but she's got to promise not to flip out. He shares his bright idea and she nearly shouts, realizing he wants to use her lap as a pillow. He quickly shushes her, warning they'll get booted if they're too loud. He urges her to chill and hear him out. He formally introduces himself as Seo Dojin and asks for her name. She gives it to him and he proposes a deal. If he doesn't zonk out within 30 minutes with his head on her lap, he'll back off and she can bail. She's a bit hesitant, wondering how she can trust him. He jokingly stretches his arms out, asking if she wants to tie him up or something. He's game for whatever she wants. She dismisses him, saying it's cool and she'll take him at his word. She gives a nod of approval for the 30-minute deal, no extensions allowed. Eunsoo sets an alarm as Seo Dojin settles his head onto her lap. She can't believe she's let a total stranger use her lap as a pillow. Seo Dojin tells her to nudge him if she's getting tired. Just sleep already, she says, hoping the 30 minutes will fly by. Checking her watch every few minutes, the moment finally arrives, 30 minutes on the dot. She informs him that time's up, but when she looks down, he's already deep in dreamland. She whispers to herself, is he really asleep? Taking a closer look, she can't help but notice his chiseled features and overall good looks. Suddenly, he turns and pulls her into a hug. Startled, Eunsoo wonders if he's crossing a line. She guides him onto the bed, complaining about her legs going numb and thinking about hitting the road. She muses that maybe she should catch some sleep while she's here. Lying back, Eunsoo can't help but admire how good-looking Seo Dojin is from every angle. Then it hits her, she forgot to ask what he does for a living. Is he a model? An athlete? Maybe an up-and-coming actor, considering his earlier company? The questions swirl in her mind as she drifts off. Thinking about how great it must be to be so attractive, she falls asleep. A couple of hours later, she wakes up, checking the clock. 2 hours have passed. With a muttered, oh, shoot, she decides it's time to head home. Eunsoo gives Seo Dojin a gentle shake, suggesting he might want to wake up. But the guy's out cold, not moving an inch. Standing up, she takes in the situation, wondering if it's cool to just leave him here. Part of her worry comes from how ridiculously good-looking he is, could be risky leaving him like this. As she tries to wake him one more time, his phone starts ringing, snapping her out of her thoughts. With a sigh, she picks up the call, and the person on the other end wants to know why Seo's phone is being answered by a stranger. She casually mentions that he's currently off in dreamland. The caller's obviously surprised and double-checks if Mr. Seo's really asleep. She confirms, and he follows up by asking where Mr. Seo is. She replies that they're at Refresh Sauna, chilling in the sleeping room. The guy on the line is taken aback and quickly wraps up the call, leaving an aura of mystery. Eunsoo's mind races with questions as she thinks about the caller's abrupt hang-up. What's up with that? What's she supposed to do if he keeps hanging up like that? A bit annoyed, she realizes she can't call him back because the phone's locked. Could he have hung up because he didn't want to come pick up Mr. Seo? Nah, she dismisses the thought. He did refer to him formally as Mr. Seo. Half an hour later, the guy from the call rushes in, looking for Eunsoo. He asks if she's the one he talked to on the phone. Confirming, she figures he must be Mr. Lee. With a sense of urgency, Mr. Lee repeats his question, wanting to confirm if Seo Dojin's actually asleep. Eunsoo reassures him, pointing out that he's right there, snoozing away. Mr. Lee, looking puzzled, wonders how Seo Dojin could be sleeping so soundly. A bit taken aback, Eunsoo asks him what he means. He quickly apologizes, clarifying that he was just wondering if she used some strong sedatives or something to put him to sleep. She quickly denies having anything to do with Seo Dojin falling asleep, emphasizing that he did it all on his own. Mr. Lee expresses surprise, asking for her contact info. Confused, she asks why, and he explains that the situation is a bit unusual, and they'd like to know who she is. Still curious, Mr. Lee asks her name. In her head, she's trying to figure out how to handle this, sensing he might make a big deal out of it. The next day, at Seo Dojin's place, Mr. Lee tries to call Eunsoo, only to find her numbers not in service. Seo Dojin asks Mr. Lee what's up, noticing Eunsoo's number isn't working. Mr. Lee responds, explaining it looks like she gave him a bogus number. This leaves Seo Dojin confused, wondering why she'd pull something like that. In a flashback to a few hours earlier, we see Mr. Lee asking for Eunsoo's number, and she smoothly gives him a fake one. He thanks her and offers to drive her home, but she declines, assuring him she'll be fine. With a quick exit, she's off, feeling like she just dodged a bullet. Back in his apartment, Seo Dojin is enjoying a nice bath, noticing his eye doesn't hurt anymore. As the warm water soothes him, he feels lighter, a feeling he hasn't had in a long time. With a satisfied smile, he thinks this is way better than popping pills to sleep, relishing the newfound peace. Fresh out of his bath, Seo Dojin decides he needs to find Eunsoo as soon as possible, determined not to let her slip away this time. But things take a turn when Seo Dojin, finding out about Eunsoo giving Mr. Lee a fake number, confronts Mr. Lee about his 5 years of employment with him. Mr. Lee, who's been with Seo Dojin for half a decade, nods in agreement. But Seo Dojin isn't happy about the situation and makes it clear, saying sorry isn't going to cut it. He wants action. Mr. Lee takes this seriously, promising to track Eunsoo down ASAP. Seo Dojin doesn't mince words, he needs Eunsoo by his side, no matter what it takes. The cost is irrelevant, he just wants to find her. Meanwhile, at Eunsoo's office, her boss Ms. Young hands her a stack of paperwork, asking her to make 10 copies of each. She singles out a blue file, emphasizing that it requires extra care. Eunsoo is told to not mess up this time and to make sure she shreds the blue file when she's done. Ms. Young then asks Eunsoo to grab her a cafe latte while she's at it. Sure thing, Ma, Eunsoo replies with a smile. As she walks by her colleague Tae Kyung, he gives her a pitying look, hinting at some hidden office drama. Back in the break room, Eunsoo angrily slams her coffee down on the table, venting her frustration. Despite being a permanent employee now, things haven't gotten any better. Tae Kyung walks in and interrupts her private meltdown. Seeing her upset, Tae Kyung tries to cheer her up, telling her to not let Ms. Young get to her. Eunsoo brushes it off, claiming she's fine, but internally, she admits she's far from okay. Tae Kyung offers to help with the photocopying, but Eunsoo declines, saying it's her job. Tae Kyung insists, reminding her they're a team and she shouldn't hesitate to ask for help. Touched, Eunsoo thanks him and promises to treat him to coffee sometime. As Tae Kyung leaves, Eunsoo reflects on how hard she's worked to get where she is. She won't let a few bumps in the road get her down. After a while, she takes the coffee to Ms. Young, who questions why it took so long. Eunsoo quickly apologizes. In her rush, Ms. Young accidentally spills some coffee on Eunsoo's hand. Without batting an eye, she asks about the arrival of the new section head. As Eunsoo checks her hand, already reddening from the hot coffee, Tae Kyung loudly announces the arrival of the new boss. Eunsoo's eyes go wide when she sees who it is, Seo Dojin. He introduces himself as the new section head, leaving Eunsoo in shock. Eunsoo's jaw nearly drops to the floor. This can't be happening, she thinks, seeing Seo Dojin introduced as her new section head. The assistant manager is all smiles, seemingly thrilled to have someone like Seo Dojin in their team. But Seo Dojin quickly shifts the vibe, saying he'd rather be useful than just impressive. He's all business, ready to dive into work without the usual small talk. He calls a meeting in 10 minutes, leaving everyone scrambling and whispering about this unexpected turn of events. Ms. Young eyes Eunsoo, asking if she knows their new boss. Eunsoo quickly denies it, getting a rush from the sudden shift in her usually dull office life. The assistant manager urges everyone to get their act together in time for the meeting. In the meeting room, Seo Dojin doesn't mince words, questioning why the report includes common knowledge. The assistant manager tries to justify it, but Seo Dojin isn't having it. He's looking for fresh ideas, not a rundown of what everyone already knows. The room goes quiet, and Seo Dojin suggests that the assistant manager should never come unprepared. Chae Eunsoo jumps in, mentioning they do have something prepared. Seo Dojin nods, signaling him to proceed. Eunsoo, on the other hand, is still reeling from the shock. I can't believe the guy from the sauna is our new boss, she thinks to herself. Seo Dojin spots an error in the proposal, the current date figures are off. Eunsoo mentally curses, realizing she used Ms. Young's data to make the chart. When Seo Dojin looks at Ms. Young, she avoids his gaze. Feeling responsible, Eunsoo confesses to writing the proposal, causing a ripple of surprise in the room. Seo Dojin appreciates the idea behind the proposal, but points out the incorrect data. Eunsoo apologizes, and he decides to wrap up the meeting. But not before asking Eunsoo to meet him in his office, leaving everyone on edge with curiosity. In Seo Dojin's office, Eunsoo is a bundle of nerves. She wonders if he wants to talk about the fake number she gave him or the mistake in the proposal. She starts to apologize, but he cuts her off, asking what she's sorry for. He admits he understands why she was hesitant to give her number to a stranger and apologizes for making her feel uncomfortable. He can't help but marvel at how they've crossed paths again, musing that it must be fate. Eunsoo chuckles nervously, half expecting him to be ticked off. But Seo Dojin throws her a curveball, hinting at a formal offer. He casually asks if she's free tonight, and she can't help but wonder if he's planning another sleep session. The mere thought of it sends her mind racing with potential office gossip. Seo Dojin quickly catches her off guard, assuring her there's no pressure. He just wants to treat her to dinner as a thank you. Eunsoo takes a moment to process this, asking him to clarify the offer. She makes it clear that she's not up for mixing work with personal stuff. He suggests they hash it out over dinner, but Eunsoo's not having it. Her hand balls into a fist as she flatly turns him down. The tension in the room is palpable as she firmly draws the line, not backing down despite Seo Dojin's persistence. Despite Eunsoo's refusal, Seo Dojin doesn't let her leave without a word. With a smile, he expresses his excitement for her proposal, loving the idea of a cafe-cum-cultural space. He encourages her to polish it up and run with the idea. Eunsoo thanks him and heads out, leaving Seo Dojin alone in his office. He muses to himself that this won't be a walk in the park. Determined, he calls Mr. Lee, asking for Eunsoo's personnel file. He hangs up, reflecting on his resolve to not let her slip away so easily. The next day, Seo Dojin finds himself sharing a car ride with Eunsoo. She fidgets with her seatbelt, throwing anxious glances his way. Finally gathering her courage, she asks why he needs her to tag along. Seo Dojin explains they're going to see a potential location for her proposal. It makes sense for her to be there, considering it was her idea. Eunsoo tries to deflect, mentioning that she and Ms. Young brainstormed the idea together. Seo Dojin assures her he'll talk to Ms. Young directly and asks if there are any other issues. She says yes, but internally admits that the only issue is how awkward this whole situation is. When they get to their destination, Eunsoo steps out of the car, welcoming the fresh breeze. She can't help but admire the place, thinking it's perfect for a date. She wonders if Seo Dojin has a thing for places like this. Interrupting her thoughts, Seo Dojin suggests they head inside. Once seated, he tells her to order anything she likes. But she insists on just having coffee. Seo Dojin urges her to order more, noting that this place is a hit with the ladies. Eunsoo sticks to her choice of an Americano. As the desserts and coffee arrive, she admires the presentation, remarking on how pretty it looks. Seo Dojin reveals he ordered the tea and dessert set, just in case, and asks if she likes it. Eunsoo nods, expressing her wish to have something similar in their menu. She envisions a cultural space that aligns with the company's image, highlighting the need for it to be trendy and modern, much like the place they're in. Eunsoo appreciates the cozy wooden ambience, but feels it's a bit too fancy. She asks Seo Dojin if he's not drinking coffee, and he reveals he doesn't drink caffeine. Knowing they're on the clock, Seo Dojin cuts to the chase. He throws a curveball, asking Eunsoo her daily rate. Eunsoo freezes, thinking, oh no, not this again. Sensing her discomfort, he quickly clarifies he's talking about her helping him sleep. Eunsoo suggests he should see a doctor instead, but he brushes it off, asking if she thinks he hasn't tried that already. Seo Dojin proposes they negotiate a price and put it in writing. But Eunsoo stands her ground, repeating her refusal to play along. When Seo Dojin asks why she's hesitant to meet him outside work, she doesn't hold back. She admits she doesn't want to spend another night with someone who isn't her boyfriend. Seo Dojin teases her, suggesting that becoming her boyfriend could solve the issue. Shocked, Eunsoo asks if he's serious. He questions what her problem is, pointing out that she doesn't have a boyfriend at the moment. In response, she raises her voice, accusing him of spying on her. A tense silence follows as Eunsoo's nerves get the better of her. She takes a deep breath, reminding herself to remain calm and professional. She then warns him that if he brings up the topic again, she'll report him for sexual harassment. He simply nods, saying, understood. Back at the office, Eunsoo can't help but worry. Will Seo Dojin retaliate now that she's turned him down? As she contemplates her next move, he interrupts her thoughts, suggesting they should head back. Trying to lighten the mood, Eunsoo points out they barely touched their dessert. But Seo Dojin is all business, asking her to submit an analysis on promotional cafes by day's end. She stammers, asking if it's due today. He nonchalantly asks if she needs more time. With a forced smile, she quickly says she doesn't, mentally preparing herself for the workload. In the weeks that follow, Ms. Young vents her frustrations about Seo Dojin's relentless work ethic. Tae Kyung chimes in, sharing rumors about Seo Dojin's insomnia. The two speculate about his relationship status, wondering if a breakup is to blame for his ruthless drive. Is Mr. Seo taking out his stress on us? Ms. Young openly wonders. Right on cue, Seo Dojin strides in, asking about the proposal's progress. With a determined air, he announces that no one's heading home until their assignments are done and dusted. Ms. Young can't help but ask, do you ever sleep, Mr. Seo? He admits to battling insomnia, hinting that it's a shared problem. Eunsoo pauses her typing, drawn into the conversation, as Ms. Young probes further, asking who's at fault. With a solemn look, Seo Dojin suggests it's a collective issue. Looking at their weary faces, Seo Dojin softens, deciding to cut them some slack. Turning to Eunsoo, he tells her she can leave once she's tweaked her proposal. She simply nods, replying, okay. As Ms. Young waves goodbye, Tae Kyung voices his concern. He offers his help, but Eunsoo assures him she just needs Mr. Seo's approval on her files. She tells Tae Kyung not to fret over her and to head home. Relieved, Tae Kyung urges her to finish up quickly. She waves him off, making her way to Seo Dojin's office. Walking down the corridor, she recalls the countless times he's rejected her revisions. Eunsoo is at her wit's end. She musters her courage, knocking on Seo Dojin's door, hoping he'll finally give her proposal the green light. He calls her in. Handing over her revised proposal, she mentions she's made the requested changes. As Seo Dojin reviews it, she can't help but marvel at how composed he seems despite his insomnia. He suddenly calls her name, asking if she was zoning out. She quickly denies it, only for him to point out an error in the proposal. Confused, she's sure she's checked that section thoroughly. Seo Dojin questions the quality of her work, asking if this is what she plans to present at tomorrow's meeting. He urges her to concentrate. She apologizes, but he brushes it off, making it clear he's not looking for an apology. Eunsoo bluntly asks if his harshness is due to her rejecting his offer. He simply says yes, instructing her to revise the proposal before leaving. Exiting his office, she's taken aback by his frankness. It was so straightforward that she didn't even get the chance to respond. Seeing her, Mr. Lee comments on her late hours, sympathizing with her. She nods in agreement, appreciating his understanding. As he prepares to leave, he mentions he's delivering Mr. Seo's pills before heading home. Mr. Lee spills the beans, revealing that Mr. Seo's workaholic tendencies stem from his insomnia, and it's taking a toll on his health. He admits the pills might not seem like much, but it's his small way of helping Mr. Seo handle his situation. Caught off guard, she starts to feel a twinge of sympathy for Mr. Seo, but shakes it off quickly, reminding herself that it's not her problem. To break the awkward silence, she tells Mr. Lee to carry on with his tasks. She mentions she's got a proposal to revise and excuses herself, showing her determination to get her work done. As Mr. Lee hands him his pills, he wonders aloud if Mr. Seo thinks he's pushing himself too hard. Mr. Seo admits he expected her to throw in the towel sooner, but he's been pleasantly surprised by her grit and determination. Mr. Lee voices his worry, suggesting Mr. Seo should take it easy. But Mr. Seo brushes him off, assuring him he's doing okay. Even though he's a bit tired, he admits he's feeling strangely motivated these days. Back at her desk, Eunsoo grumbles about the late night ahead. Fighting off sleepiness, she reminds herself to double-check her work this time for any errors. As she stares at her screen, everything becomes a blur. She decides to give herself a quick 10-minute nap and sets an alarm. But then, Mr. Seo calls, asking her to wake up. She begs for 5 more minutes, eager for a short break from work. Mr. Seo chuckles, pointing out it's the 10th time she's asked for 5 more minutes. Eunsoo's eyes widen as she realizes she's talking to Mr. Seo. Wondering why he's there, he tells her that her alarm was disturbing him. Before she can check her phone, he casually mentions he's already turned it off. He teases her about her peaceful sleep, even hinting at a bit of envy. He offers her his handkerchief, jokingly suggesting she might need to wipe away any drool. With a playful nudge, he adds that she might have missed a spot. Later in the restroom, Eunsoo reflects on Mr. Lee's revelations about Mr. Seo's insomnia. She can't believe she slept so soundly in front of someone who struggles with sleep. Feeling guilty, she decides to finish her work quickly and head home. When she returns to her desk, she finds Mr. Seo sitting comfortably in her chair, typing away on her computer. Surprised, she apologizes, but he coolly tells her she can leave since he's already revised the proposal. Stunned, she asks, "Already?" He shrugs, saying that it's not that hard when you know your way around the software. Seo Dojin wraps up his work for the day, signaling Eunsoo that she's free to take off. As he gathers his things, she pops a question about his own evening plans. He shrugs, dropping the bombshell that there's no use heading home if sleep's not on the cards. He adds that burying himself in work helps keep his mind off the insomnia. Eunsoo takes a moment and then cautiously floats an idea, "Maybe I could help you get some sleep?" Caught off guard, he spins around, asking if she's pulling his leg. She confirms her offer, though she's unsure of how much assistance she could be. Grateful, he mentions his tired eyes could use a break. Without skipping a beat, he suggests they start pronto. He thinks of revisiting the sauna they once went to, but she seems hesitant, possibly worried about the late hours. In her head, the sauna plan at this time doesn't seem like the best idea. She proposes they crash at the office, figuring it might be a practical solution if his sleep issues are as bad as he claims. He's cool with the idea and suggests heading inside. She's okay with dozing off right where they are, but he insists a couch would be more comfortable. As they step into his office, he slips off his jacket and hints they could try the same routine as last time. He invites her to sit down first. As she settles in, she can't help but notice a different vibe compared to their sauna experience. There's a palpable tension in the room, and she's left wondering why. He attempts to lie down, but sleep eludes him. Time ticks by, and it's not like his usual bouts of insomnia. Annoyed, he sits up, loosens his tie, and sighs out his frustration. In a moment of hesitation, he asks her to take off her stockings. Startled, she questions his request. Realizing how it must have sounded, he backtracks, admitting he might need professional medical help. He suggests she can head home now, regretting his awkward proposal. She apologizes, expressing disappointment that she couldn't be of help. With a polite bow, she takes her leave, hoping he'll find a solution soon. The next morning, Eunsoo's alarm pulls her from sleep, leaving her feeling drained. As she reaches for her phone, she spots a text from her ex, Eunsoo, urging her to call him. A mix of curiosity and reluctance fills her as she wonders why he'd want to talk after their breakup months ago. She shrugs it off, tossing her phone aside, thinking, not today, Eunsoo. She flops back onto her bed, thinking back on the exhausted Mr. Seo from the previous night. She wonders if he managed to catch any Z's. Remembering the stockings incident makes her cheeks heat up, and she hides her face, thinking, was that too much? Back at Seo Dojin's place, he's having a rough night. He's tossing and turning, haunted by nightmares. Sitting upright, he takes deep breaths, admitting to himself that it was the same old nightmare triggered by his sleep meds. Glancing at the clock, he realizes he's only managed 2 hours of sleep. Deciding he needs a new prescription, he plans to get it sorted first thing in the morning, determined not to repeat the same blunder. At the board meeting, Seo Dojin lays out his new project idea but is met with lukewarm responses from the executives. Unfazed, he pitches his vision for a cultural hub, a cafe that doubles as a showcase for the latest auto models and insurance plans, offering customers a cozy and laid-back environment to explore. Seo Dojin, still in pitch mode, underscores the perks of his cafe concept. He insists that the easy-breezy vibe of the place will draw more feet through the doors, giving sales a solid boost. But there's more to it. He sees it as a chance for the company to build deeper, more meaningful relationships with their customers. For him, it's not just about ringing up sales, but fostering enduring bonds. Wrapping up the meeting, he steps out to find Ms. Young and Eunsoo waiting in the corridor. They flash friendly smiles his way, but he barely acknowledges them, breezing past without a word. His aloofness leaves them a tad confused, wondering what could have triggered this icy demeanor. Ms. Young, hazarding a guess, suggests that the executive meeting might not have gone as smoothly as he'd hoped. Eunsoo, intrigued by the whole situation, can't help but share her own theories. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Seo Dojin's discussing his escalating eye pain with his doc. She quizzes him on his sleep habits, trying to get to the root of the problem. He lets slip about running into her at a club, and how they ended up cuddling, which surprisingly sent him off to dreamland. The doctor's taken aback, but keeps her cool, asking if a simple snuggle did the trick. He confirms, admitting he's just as baffled. She jokes about him asking her to be his regular cuddle buddy, but quickly dismisses the idea, realizing it's not a permanent fix for his insomnia. She suggests he try recreating the same scenario with someone else, but he's quick to shoot down the idea. She figures he's not desperate enough yet to go to such lengths. He asks about switching up his sleep aids, hoping for a better alternative. She warns him he's already on a high dose, then asks if he's been hallucinating. He flatly denies it. When she inquires about nightmares, he again says no. Deciding to prescribe him new meds, she advises him to give the cuddling idea another shot. He appreciates her advice, thanking her for her time. He rings up Mr. Lee, laying out his requirements for a potential cuddle buddy. He offers a cool $1,000,000, with the stipulation that they be hair-free. They decide to meet at Refresh Sauna to discuss further. At the sauna, Seo Dojin keeps an eye on his phone, waiting for his date. As she walks in, she confirms his identity, and he nods. He takes note of her voice, deciding it's not exactly what he had in mind. Regardless, he thanks her for showing up, assuring her it'll be a breeze. She seems skeptical about the hefty fee for just a cuddle session, but he confidently reassures her. He suggests they keep the chit-chat to a minimum, and she agrees. With that out of the way, he announces it's time to get the show on the road. The scene that cuts to the company's bustling office, where Dojin wraps up a meeting. He rubs his neck, looking visibly drained as he thanks everyone for their time. Eunsoo watches him, a pang of sympathy flashing in her eyes. She can't help but wonder if he's still battling sleepless nights. He just seems so worn out. The office buzzes with whispers about Mr. Seo's health. Employees speculate on whether he's under the weather. They chatter about how despite the successful executive meeting, he seems off today. The rumor mill churns out stories about his late-night work marathons and crack-of-dawn arrivals. Worries bubble up about him potentially burning out from such a grueling routine. Chae Eunsoo nudges Eunsoo, asking if she's heading home. She nods in affirmation. As she starts packing up, her phone pings with a text from Eunsoo. He mentions he's got something crucial to share and is waiting for her outside the office. She texts back, making it clear she's not interested in a chat. Undeterred, he responds that he's already at her office and will wait till she's free. She shakes her head, wondering what he could possibly want. Despite her uncertainty, she decides to draw a line in the sand today. Outside the office, Eunsoo waits, looking a bit haggard. Eunsoo reminds him that they're over and urges him to get to the point. He suggests finding a quieter spot to talk, but she demands to know what's going on right then and there. He stutters, admitting he's struggled since their breakup and confesses to some regrettable blunders. He hopes they could maybe sit down and hash things out. She sighs, torn between annoyance and pity, curious about the new drama he's cooked up. She can't help but raise an eyebrow at his revelation. She thinks, wait, he and broke up? She recalls him gloating about their office romance. Now he's on her doorstep, claiming they've split. She shakes her head, wondering if he's lost the plot. He pours out his feelings, confessing he regrets letting her go and how no one's cared for him quite like she did. She calmly asks if that's why he's here. He admits his mistake, but she cuts him off, stating their chapter is closed. He pleads for a fresh start, reaching for her hand. She pulls away, firmly telling him to back off, and rushes back inside. As she steps into the elevator, she finds herself face to face with Seo Dojin. The elevator hums in silence. She considers escaping the awkwardness by getting off on another floor. But Seo Dojin breaks the silence, asking if the guy outside was her boyfriend. He seems curious about their relationship. Eunsoo ponders, wondering where Dojin could have seen her exchange with Eunsoo. She hopes he didn't catch their entire conversation. When Dojin probes further, she hesitates, deciding it's a personal matter. She responds, telling him it's none of his concern. Dojin quickly clarifies he didn't mean to intrude, admitting he felt a twinge of jealousy. He asks if she's seen a doctor about her own issues, emphasizing self-care. He shares that he did consult a doctor, but it didn't do much for his sleep woes. The elevator doors slide open, and she reflects on how pointless hospital visits seem. Dojin then asks if she's not getting off, and mentions he needs to go back down. As Eunsoo steps into the office, heads turn her way. Compliments about her radiant look today fill the air. Chae Eunsoo teases her about a potential date, and she laughs it off, saying there's no such thing. He then invites her for a post-work dinner. Eunsoo lets Chae Eunsoo down gently, sharing that she's already booked for the evening. Chae Eunsoo, a bit deflated, wishes he'd asked her sooner. He mentions they were all planning to wrap up work at a reasonable hour since Mr. Seo isn't around. Eunsoo perks up, wait, Mr. Seo isn't in today? Chae Eunsoo confirms that Mr. Seo is out of town on business in Busan. Ms. Young then teases Eunsoo about whether she's looking for him to flaunt her new coat. Eunsoo wishes she could put a lid on Ms. Young's teasing but instead politely explains she needs to discuss a report with him. Ms. Young informs her that Mr. Seo left the day before and should be back by the afternoon. Eunsoo figures she'll catch him later then. Ms. Young shifts gears, commenting on Eunsoo's belt, wondering if it's a bit too tight. Eunsoo chuckles, agreeing that she might need to switch it up tomorrow. She then compliments Ms. Young's scarf, asking if it's a new addition. Ms. Young, pleased with the compliment, confirms she got it just yesterday. Eunsoo assures her it looks fantastic. Ms. Young thanks her, and as Eunsoo heads off to grab coffee, Ms. Young asks if she could help her with some market research later. She explains it's a bit overwhelming for her alone. Eunsoo, taken aback, contemplates the request. Ms. Young senses her hesitation, asking if there's an issue. Eunsoo sighs inwardly, feeling like she's constantly juggling extra tasks. She explains she has a report to finish, but Ms. Young suggests pushing it off, urging Eunsoo to help her instead. Eunsoo reluctantly considers it, feeling swamped by the pileup of tasks. Just then, Dojin walks in, catching them off guard. After exchanging pleasantries, he asks Eunsoo about the cafe site scouting. She confirms she's on it. He tells her to stop pestering Ms. Young and bring the report to his office. Eunsoo nods, grateful for the clear directive. Seo Dojin, observing the dynamics, reminds Eunsoo she's not the newbie anymore. He suggests giving Ms. Young some breathing space. He turns to Ms. Young, asking if she agrees, and the woman concurs, saying she'll head to the conference room while Eunsoo gets back to work. Eunsoo wonders why he didn't pitch in to help. Out loud, she mentions his early return from Busan. He confirms he got back earlier to avoid night driving. He leans in, locking eyes with her. You know, if you're concerned about me driving sleep-deprived, there might be a way you could help. His voice is soft and hopeful, leaving Eunsoo flustered, trying to decipher his cryptic message. A little taken aback, she hustles to hand Seo Dojin the report. He teases her, wondering what's got her so rattled. She tries to brush it off, but his cheeky grin keeps the mood from getting too heavy. Breathing a sigh of relief, she assures him she's got everything under control. Seo Dojin rolls with it, deciding they should move forward with the third candidate. He assigns her the task of researching property prices in the area and getting a ballpark figure for the land by day's end. Once she's done, she makes a beeline for his office, data in hand. But as she stands before him, she hesitates, and he picks up on her nervous energy. Intrigued, he asks if there's something else she wants to discuss. But before she can get a word out, he interrupts, nudging her to spill the beans. She takes a deep breath and suggests they give it a shot, his brows furrow in confusion, asking her to clarify. Without missing a beat, she slips off her jacket, leaving him speechless. She reminds him of his earlier complaint about the uncomfortable stockings. He fires back, pointing out she'd turned down his proposal earlier that day. She pleads with him not to make fun of her, stressing it hadn't been an easy decision. Before she can second-guess herself, he eagerly agrees, suggesting they try it out. In a flash, he's sprawled across her legs, and a wave of relief washes over him as he thinks, this is it, soft and warm. For the first time in what feels like forever, he feels sleep tugging at his eyelids. As she watches him drift off, she tries to keep her cool, reminding herself it's just therapeutic. Observing him closely, she realizes he's genuinely asleep and starts to wonder if everything he'd shared with her was the real deal. Meanwhile, Hyunsoo is catching up with his pals over a meal at their usual budget-friendly haunt. He drops the bomb that Eunsoo has landed a full-time gig at S Group. His buddy chimes in, marveling at the juicy perks like bonuses upwards of 10 million won and retirement packages nearing 100 million won. Hyunsoo's jaw drops. Wait, seriously? His friend teases him, asking if he's having second thoughts about their split. Another pal reminisces about how Eunsoo always had his back, implying she's earned every bit of her success. Hyunsoo casually mentions he swung by to see Eunsoo yesterday. His friends, all ears, probe him for details. Hyunsoo brushes it off, claiming she's just playing hard to get. He confidently adds that she's a sucker for sentiment and bets she'll come crawling back sooner than later. As the sun peeks over the horizon, Seo Dojin's phone buzzes, jolting him awake. He fumbles for it, only to find it's a bit too far. Sitting up, he scratches his head, wondering why he's not on his bed. Then memories from last night wash over him, and he can't help but grin. Through the window, he spots Eunsoo, looking different today, without her trench coat. He muses, she sure knows how to switch it up. But he admits, the coat did look great on her. Eunsoo glances up at his office window, but it's empty. She shakes off the feeling of being watched and walks away, picking up a call from a colleague. Back in his office, Seo Dojin wonders why he's playing hide-and-seek with her. Moments later, he steps out, flashing a warm smile and greeting everyone, catching them off guard. He announces there's a meeting in half an hour and struts off. Ms. Young turns to the others, asking if they saw his smile. She gushes about how handsome he looks, prompting Tae Kyon to remind her she once called him haggard. She shrugs it off, saying that was then, this is now. Eunsoo smiles to herself, thinking Mr. Seo must have had a good night's sleep. She remembers last night and feels a wave of relief wash over her. The office seems to hum along nicely with a well-rested Mr. Seo. Later in the afternoon, Seo Dojin checks his watch and points out it's past lunchtime. He's noticed Eunsoo's been working non-stop since morning and suggests they grab a bite before heading back. She's engrossed in her phone and he has to call her name twice to get her attention. He repeats his lunch suggestion, adding it's a thank you for last night. He assures her there's no pressure, and she agrees. He asks if she has any food preferences, and she says she's good with anything. He decides to take her to a place he knows. At the restaurant, Eunsoo eyes her meal, and Seo Dojin asks if she likes it. She smiles, praising the place. But her phone keeps ringing, and in her head, she grumbles that Hyunsoo is driving her crazy with these calls and wondering how long he plans to keep this up. Seo Dojin notices her frown and asks if something's wrong. She brushes it off as spam calls. He offers to handle it for her, promising to make sure she never gets those calls again. She looks at him curiously, asking how. He suggests a deal, he'll fix her problem if she agrees to date him. Eunsoo's eyebrows shoot up at Dojin's offer. Really, we're doing this again, she asks. He flashes a grin, reminding her that she turned down his money, so now he's giving her a choice, be his date or take the cash. He adds that he'll sort out the spam calls once she's made up her mind. Eunsoo's quick to clarify that she helped him out last night because he needed it, not for a reward. She insists dating should come from the heart, not some transaction. But then Dojin drops a bombshell, he actually likes her. She fires back, saying he's just saying that because he needs her. Dojin looks at her earnestly, wondering if it really matters why. He asks if there's any reason they shouldn't date, leaving her grappling with the fact that getting through to him might not be as easy as she thought. Eunsoo levels with him, saying she doesn't have feelings for him. Dojin apologizes if he came off too strong but admits he's a bit desperate. He urges her to think it over and says she can set any terms she likes. Eunsoo stands her ground, saying starting a relationship this way isn't right. But she does offer to help him out now and then if things get too much. Seo Dojin quips about how occasionally sounds so comforting, while her phone keeps buzzing, adding another wrinkle to their chat. Later, Eunsoo finds herself on the company rooftop, enjoying the cool breeze. She thinks back to lunch and how she could barely taste the pasta, like trying to eat a ton of potatoes without a drink. Just then, her phone buzzes again. It's Hyunsoo, saying he's outside her office and wants to talk. She rolls her eyes, thinking about how he's been blowing up her phone all day. Eunsoo sighs in frustration, likening this to dealing with spam calls. She thinks back to Seo Dojin's offer and can't help but blush a little. But she shakes it off, reminding herself not to get drawn into his charm. She ponders the consequences of accepting his offer, her past encounters with Dojin playing out like a movie in her mind. She worries if he'll push her too hard again, recalling the tough times they've had before. But Eunsoo decides dealing with Hyunsoo is more pressing right now. She braces herself to face him and finally put an end to this. As she steps outside, the air is thick with tension, and she's ready for whatever comes next. So there's Hyunsoo, out of nowhere, with a bouquet in his hands. He's all hopeful smiles and "do you like them?" while trying to push the flowers towards Eunsoo. But she's having none of it. She's firm, a bit annoyed even, telling him to cut out the theatrics. She can't help but think back to when they were dating and how he always thought flowers were a waste of money. Funny how things change when you're not together anymore. She tells him straight up, she doesn't want his flowers or his melodrama. Why is he making things so difficult? Her words hang heavy between them, frustration and a plea for an end to it all. Hyunsoo breaks the silence, reminding her that he's been wanting to get back together. He's persistent, saying they can start fresh if she comes back. She's quick to shut him down, reminding him they're broken up, it's over. But he's not convinced, asking why she's playing hard to get when she's not seeing anyone else. She can't believe he still doesn't get why things didn't work out between them. Hyunsoo smirks at her, and she calls him out on it. Does he really think she can't see what he's up to? She raises her voice, telling him she's actually seeing someone. He scoffs, but she insists it's true. He asks who it is, and she hesitates, giving him the chance to say she's not the type to move on quickly. Eunsoo assures him it's true, but can't spill the beans, because they work together. When he asks if it's someone from her office, she says yes, and adds that he's more competent and better looking than Hyunsoo. He interrupts her, saying there's no way she's serious. Hyunsoo can't believe someone so great would date her, but before he can finish, Seo Dojin walks in, asking him to step aside. He casually mentions he's the guy Eunsoo was talking about and puts his arm around her. He turns to Hyunsoo, asking if there's a problem. Hyunsoo's jaw drops in disbelief, while a blush creeps up Eunsoo's cheeks. Seo Dojin, the ever-charming devil, seizes the moment, with a cheeky wink towards Eunsoo. In a smooth move straight out of a movie scene, he steps closer, sliding an arm around Eunsoo's waist, his words boldly claiming her as his own. With a confident grin, Dojin introduces himself as Eunsoo's boyfriend, the twinkle in his eye suggesting he's more than just a pretty face. He turns to Hyunsoo, his playful curiosity evident as he asks who this unexpected visitor is. His gaze lands on the flowers in Hyunsoo's hands, and he can't resist a jab. With a smirk, he implies that Hyunsoo might have been better off keeping his floral intentions to himself. Seo Dojin's arm tightens slightly around Eunsoo, a silent declaration of ownership. He recounts Eunsoo's earlier mention of an ex pestering her, raising an eyebrow as if asking, could that be you? All in a day's fun. He even tries to guess Hyunsoo's name, but cuts himself short, citing an urgent matter that needs his attention. As he strides away, Eunsoo watches him go, a rush of memories flooding back. She thinks about how she overlooked so much when they were together. She feels a mix of pity and disappointment for him, almost as if she's seeing him for the first time. As the echoes of his departure fade, she breathes a sigh of relief, glad for the distance between them. A wry smile tugs at her lips as she wonders what she ever saw in him. Dojin checks if they're officially dating now, and she smiles at him gratefully. He brushes off her thanks, suggesting they go out as a way for her to show her gratitude. He hints at the mutual benefits their arrangement could bring, showing his knack for striking a good deal. Noticing her hesitation, he steps in with a gentle smile, suggesting they take a break from the conversation. He acknowledges it's time to wrap up work and proposes a change of scenery, inviting her to continue their chat somewhere else. In the relaxed setting of a local eatery, Dojin suggests they hash out some terms, hinting at a mutual agreement that takes her by surprise. She catches his drift and playfully calls him out for getting ahead of himself. It's like he's put the cart before the horse. But Dojin is unfazed. He doubles down, insisting their collaboration is inevitable, so why beat around the bush? As she mulls over his move, she can't help but admire his knack for seizing an opportunity the minute it presents itself, like a pro chess player making a killer move. She's reminded of an old saying, out of the frying pan and into the fire. After weighing up her options, she decides to go along with this unconventional relationship he's proposing. Dojin seems pleased they're finally on the same page. But she has one condition: their arrangement ends as soon as his insomnia does. Dojin suggests a year-long commitment, but she reacts with a gasp, exclaiming that a whole year is just too much. He teases her, saying he'd marry her right now if he could. She's taken aback, wondering how he can drop such a bombshell so casually. But she brushes it off, reminding herself it's just his way of saying he needs her. With a firm resolve, Eunsoo agrees to Dojin's one-year plan but lays down a crucial term. She insists he promises to end things once his insomnia is fixed, putting a definite expiry date on their deal. Dojin raises an eyebrow, playfully asking if she really dislikes him that much. Keeping her cool, she honestly admits the whole thing is a bit weird. As they dive deeper into their negotiation, Dojin drops another condition into the mix. He calmly states he's a one-woman man and suggests she does the same. In no uncertain terms, he tells her not to date other guys while they're together. She's thrown for a loop and asks him to clarify. Her eyes are filled with a mix of curiosity and confusion as she tries to decipher what he expects from her during this arrangement. Stepping out of the restaurant, bathed in the warm city glow, Seo Dojin breaks their comfortable silence with a casual question. He wonders if she's already having second thoughts about their quirky deal. She admits that while regret isn't on the horizon yet, it's all a bit new and strange. Ever the charmer, Dojin soothes her worries, reminding her of the mutual perks of their arrangement. He advises her not to let the unknowns keep her up at night. She's unsure, but hopeful about the whole thing, expressing that she hopes he's right about the silver linings. He offers her a ride home, but she politely declines, insisting she can grab a cab. Dojin teases her gently, saying he wouldn't want to be that guy who lets his slightly buzzed girlfriend head home alone. Given the day's events, he suggests it might be safer for him to take her. In the cozy confines of the car, he throws a glance her way, casually asking about her plans for tomorrow. She looks at him, puzzled, and he reminds her of their unique schedule: Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, and 2 Sundays each month. As he starts elaborating on their peculiar agreement, she puts a hand over his mouth, cutting him off. She whispers that they should save the details for later, maybe via text, to keep their chat under wraps, especially from Mr. Lee. He chuckles at her caution, jokingly questioning her concern about Mr. Lee. With a playful grin, he assures her that he's pretty good at keeping secrets. Mr. Lee chimes in, assuring them his lips are sealed, adding a cheeky wink to lighten the mood. She smiles gratefully, appreciating his discretion. The camaraderie between the three turns a potentially awkward situation into a shared secret. As she gets ready to leave the car, Dojin double-checks if she's okay to walk the rest of the way. She reassures him, saying she wants to walk off the buzz a little. He bids her farewell, and as she walks, her mind drifts back to their conversation. She recalls asking what would happen if she fell for someone else. His answer lingers in her mind: he'd prefer she stick with him for the year, even if her heart strays. Dojin had added a new twist to their deal: if they're both happy after a year, they'll just keep going. His words hang in the air, adding structure yet spontaneity to their arrangement. As she contemplates their unique agreement, it feels more like a business contract than a romantic relationship. She can't shake the snagging thought: is it really fine to jump into a relationship that seems so, well, clinical? It feels like she's setting up a business deal rather than starting a romance. Meanwhile, the quiet night suddenly turns a bit eerie. A weird noise in the backdrop makes her skin crawl. She wonders what on earth could make such a sound, and why now. The usually peaceful neighborhood feels a tad creepy tonight. Picking up her pace, she heads home. Out of nowhere, a shadowy figure looms in the distance. She halts, asking if anyone's there. Suddenly, the guy sneaks up from behind, startling her with a cheeky grin. Inside the car, Mr. Lee can't help but smile at Seo Dojin. He teases him, saying he's noticed a certain pep in Dojin's step these days. Dojin, amused by this observation, playfully asks if he's the one Mr. Lee is talking about. Chuckling, Mr. Lee confirms, reminiscing about a recent instance when he saw Dojin laughing. And not just any laugh, a deep, belly laugh, the kind that's infectious. It was a sight to behold, leaving Mr. Lee pleasantly surprised. He admits he's never seen Dojin so happy before. In the middle of their banter, Dojin leans in, sharing a juicy tidbit about an interesting event from earlier. His eyes sparkle with excitement as he looks forward to the unfolding drama. On the other hand, Eunsoo finds herself in a sticky situation, facing off a stranger who seems a bit too close for comfort. Her voice trembles as she pleads with him, telling him she's broke and asking him to keep his distance. The stranger questions Eunsoo about her lateness, teasing that he's been waiting forever. He flashes a mischievous smile, asking why she's out alone and where her Prince Charming is. Casually spinning the flower from earlier in his hand, he adds a playful vibe to his words. Eunsoo, taken aback, throws back a question, asking what brings him here. He shrugs it off, saying he can go anywhere he likes. Leaning closer, he drops a bombshell. He overheard that the man from earlier is her boss. Eunsoo, baffled, asks why that's any of his concern. He smirks, claiming that since she was his girlfriend once, he still has a stake in her affairs. He teases her, hinting that she doesn't even realize how captivating she is. But he warns her not to get too hopeful. Annoyed, Eunsoo shoots back, questioning his cryptic words. She tells him if he's just here to spew nonsense, he might as well leave. With a sly grin, he voices his concern, implying that dating someone so out of her league might end in heartbreak. He bets that the charm of her new guy will wear off soon, leaving her high and dry. Eunsoo, fed up, snaps back, asserting that she doesn't need his concern and that her feelings are none of his business. As he edges closer, she instinctively recoils, her voice escalating into a shrill demand for him to back off. The air between them grows heavy with tension as she warns him not to push his luck or she'll dial the cops. With a quick, nervous motion, she rummages through her bag, her fingers desperately seeking her phone. But then, her heart sinks. A wave of realization washes over her, her phone is missing. She's hit with a rush of panic as she grasps the severity of her predicament. Her safety net has vanished. Suddenly, he leans in, offering her his phone. His nonchalant question if she needs it sends chills down her spine, making her shiver uncontrollably. He seems baffled by her reaction, pointing out that he hasn't done anything to scare her. He voices his annoyance, saying she's still the same, always playing the damsel in distress as if he's some sort of villain. His words hang heavy in the air, accusing her of hiding behind another man and laughing at his expense. She's quick to defend herself, denying his claims vehemently. The tension escalates, creating a heated exchange of blame and denial. Suddenly, he thrusts the flower towards her, insisting she take it. The standoff between them becomes a silent war zone as she shakily agrees with a whispered okay. The confrontation reaches a fever pitch when he asks her point-blank if she thinks he's a joke. In a fit of frustration, he flings the flower onto the ground, accidentally knocking off her glasses. As he bends down to pick up her glasses, he lets out a sigh of disappointment. He comments on her consistent behavior of pretending to care about him while being insincere underneath. His frustration boils over as he accuses her of looking down on him through those glasses, making him feel worthless. His anger reaches a peak as he holds her glasses tightly, seemingly on the brink of something explosive. The tension between them hangs heavy, underscored by their troubled past. Just when things seem to be spiraling out of control, Seo Dojin swoops in. Sensing the brewing storm, he rushes in, wrapping her protectively in his arms. Noticing the uncanny frequency of their encounters today, he comments on the coincidence with a hint of amusement. His concern for her shines through as he asks if she's all right. She deflects his worry, pointing out something about his face. Brushing aside any concerns about himself, he assures her it's nothing and brings the focus back on her well-being. Suddenly, he notices a trickle of blood making its way down her face. His concern morphs into sheer panic as he realizes the gravity of the situation, his voice ringing out in alarm.
In the next scene, we're in a typical, bustling hospital. You know the scene: staff, patients, and visitors all hustling and bustling. This is where Mr. Lee has just dropped off our lovebirds. Seo Dojin is there with our Eunsoo, locked in an intense gaze when, out of nowhere, the doctor strides into the scene. He quickly gets up to speed with the situation and shoots a question at Seo Dojin, who snaps back a response without missing a beat. The doctor gives him a nod of approval before turning his attention to Eunsoo, who's been quietly observing, clearly in pain. He gently instructs her to open her eyes and, recognizing her, can't help but call out her name, Eunsoo. She looks at him. a flicker of confusion crossing her face as she tries to place him. Sensing that his doctor's scrubs might be throwing her off, he reveals his face, triggering a flood of memories for Eunsoo. "Oh, it's you," she says, and they immediately fall into easy conversation. Meanwhile, Seo Dojin is on the sideline, a mix of annoyance and jealousy brewing inside him. He grills a nurse about the hospital's schedule, but his real interest is in the doctor's relationship with Eunsoo. The reunited old friends continue their chit-chat, and when he asks about her injury, she laughs at his curiosity. She assures him that her run-in with the floor was to blame, not Mr. Fancy Suit. But he's not easily swayed and asks if Seo Dojin is her boyfriend. This catches Eunsoo off guard and she stumbles over an explanation. Here, Seo Dojin steps in, introducing himself as her boss, while Seo Dongil identifies himself as an old college friend. They exchange greetings and the doctor fills him in on her injuries which, thankfully, aren't too serious. Seo Dojin insists on the best care for Eunsoo, and the doctor assures him she'll be fine as long as she keeps up with her treatment. Eunsoo thanks him warmly for his kindness and he can't help but smile, even though it's all part of the job. The only thing that throws him off is the firm grip Seo Dojin has on his hand. As they leave, the doctor tells them to drive safe and stay in touch. Eunsoo waves goodbye, while Seo Dojin grumbles at her to watch her step. When she asks about Mr. Lee, Seo Dojin tells her he's gone, but offers her his coat when he sees her shivering in the cold night air. Despite his gruff exterior, he tells her to keep warm while he gets the car ready, but Eunsoo would rather walk and chat. She takes this moment to thank him for his kindness. After a few moments of silence, they agree to extend their stroll. Back at home, the doorbell rings and her friend bursts in, bombarding her with questions about her day. Seeing the bruise on Eunsoo's face, she gasps and demands to know what happened. But Eunsoo just wants some peace and quiet, so she ushers her friend inside. Hoping for a quiet night in, the brunette, Jae, barely lets her friend Eunsoo settle into the couch before she starts grilling her for details. She throws out a wild guess about Hyunsoo being involved, which Eunsoo confirms. Jae is ready to march off to war on her behalf, but Eunsoo manages to calm her down. But all that effort goes out the window when Jae hears the whole story. She slams her beer down with such force it's a wonder the table doesn't break. Worried about Eunsoo's injury leaving a scar, Jae is relieved when Eunsoo assures her the doctor said it would heal just fine. But the questions keep coming. Did Eunsoo call the police? What about her missing phone? Eunsoo admits she plans to call her lawyer soon. Jae is stunned, taking a moment to process the roller coaster of a day Eunsoo had. Still, she can't help but ask if Eunsoo was alone the whole time. Eunsoo admits she had help from an acquaintance, and Jae jumps on the detail. Who, she asks, guessing it was the guy from the club, to which Eunsoo agrees. Exhausted and with her wound throbbing, Eunsoo needs some rest. But one last question from Jae about whether this acquaintance knew about her situation makes her wonder why he showed up in the first place. The next day at the office, Tae Kyung rushes over to Eunsoo, eager for an update. She waves off his concern, assuring him her broken glasses were just an accident. Ji-won, however, can't resist making a snide comment about keeping personal issues out of work, earning a shocked look from Tae Kyung. He suggests LASIK surgery and Eunsoo agrees, admitting she feels freer without her glasses. Just then, Seo Dojin walks in, shooting them a glare that could freeze a cup of coffee. Tae Kyung straightens up at his entrance, but Seo Dojin only tells them to focus on their work before disappearing into his office. Tae Kyung is left in a panic, worried he's now on Seo Dojin's bad side, while Eunsoo wonders what could have upset him. Meanwhile, Seo Dojin is stewing in his office, bothered by what he saw earlier and thinking back on his conversation with Eunsoo. His thoughts are interrupted when Eunsoo knocks on his door, asking for a moment to talk. Seeing this as a chance to clear the air, he invites her in, asking about her eye. She assures him it's fine and thanks him for his help, which he appreciates. She also mentions being late because of a doctor's appointment, which he understands. Finally, he returns her phone, explaining she left it in his car the night before. She's there, phone in hand, and the penny drops. She realizes why he came back, and boy, was she lucky he did. He starts quizzing her about what she plans to do about him. She's clueless until he gets specific, mentioning her threat from yesterday and offering to connect her with a lawyer. She declines, but makes sure to thank him for his concern. Then out of the blue, he asks if they're dating. The question catches her off guard and she mumbles something about only dating when necessary. Seo Dojin takes a moment to digest her answer, while she wonders if she pushed him away. After a quiet moment, he fills her in on his plans for later. As she gets ready to leave his office, he calls her name, making her pause. He urges her to reconsider his offer about the lawyer. She gives him a quick yes sir, and slams the door behind her. Fast forward to later that day. We see her ticking off a list of appointments, one with the lawyer, one with the optometrist, and one at the hospital where her book club buddy Seo Dojin works. After what feels like an eternity, she's finally en route to her last appointment. She scans the buildings, looking for one that matches Seo Dojin's address, and spots a luxurious-looking building. She heads inside, she finds his door and hesitates, a wave of emotions crashing over her. Just as she raises her hand to knock, the door swings open and there he is, casually running a hand through his shiny black hair. He comments that she's early, and she agrees, surprised her day flew by so fast. He notices the package she's holding, and when she admits she didn't want to show up empty-handed, he seems genuinely touched. He invites her in, tells her he needs to get dressed, and disappears into his room. Left alone, Eunsoo takes a moment to take in her surroundings. Her eyes are drawn to the glass wall with a stunning view of the city. She's completely captivated until Seo Dojin's voice snaps her back to reality. He asks if she likes the view and she can't help but gush about it. He tells her that's why he loves high-rise apartments. For the views, he suggests having some cake, but she opts for coffee instead. Unfortunately, he admits he's out of coffee, triggering her memory that he doesn't do caffeine. Not to worry, he promises to have some for her next visit, and she plays it cool. He then offers her a shower, which she declines, and then tells her to take that off. She panics, misunderstanding him, but he clarifies, he meant her coat. Relieved, she hands over her coat and they get down to business. He leads her into another part of his place, his massive bedroom, and lets her know what's up. She's taken aback, gripping her hands tightly, and tries to calm her nerves. Sensing her unease, he dims the lights, setting the mood for the night. Eunsoo is rooted to the spot, her vision all but useless in the dimly lit room. Out of nowhere, her protector's hands enclose hers, guiding her towards the bed. Her stomach flips wildly, and she's not sure why. Maybe it's because she's sitting on his bed, or maybe it's the faint whiff of citrus that fills her nostrils. But before she can ponder further, his voice breaks her train of thought. He's giving her the rundown. Mr. Lee will take her home, and she should remember his apartment code, just in case. With that, he drifts off to sleep. Eunsoo gently strokes his hair, hoping to lull him into a deeper slumber. She's taken aback when he murmurs her name. I really like you, he admits. Her face flushes crimson and she's all flustered, especially when he insists she should be more relaxed around him. Little does he know, that's what scares her the most. Thankfully, he changes the subject, asking about her eyes. He tells her to take off her glasses to avoid infection. As she reaches up to do so, he helps her, placing them on the table. Despite her best efforts, her heart is racing. Seo Dojin whispers how pretty she looks without her glasses, and then, like a switch has been flipped, he's asleep. Eunsoo murmurs to herself about the predicament she's in. She reminds him or maybe herself about their arrangement, but she knows she's playing with fire. She might just fall for him. Outside, the city is alive and bustling, but Eunsoo is lost in her thoughts about Seo Dojin. She wonders what Jae is up to. The next scene shows Jae, disbelief painted across her face. She's complaining about having to meet so late, and correctly guesses it's because of Seo Dojin. When Eunsoo confirms they're sleeping together, Chae is shocked. She accuses Eunsoo of being sly and asks if they're official. Eunsoo says yes, but can't bring herself to tell Chae that it's a contract relationship. Chae tries to dig deeper, but Eunsoo is vague. Their friends suggest that the more time they spend together, the closer they'll become. But Eunsoo doesn't share their optimism. She fears he'll never fall for someone like her, and she rattles off reasons why. Chae interrupts her by tapping the table lightly with her glass, demanding Eunsoo's attention. Chae is thrilled that Eunsoo has landed such a catch. She encourages Eunsoo to enjoy the relationship, but Eunsoo worries about repeating past mistakes. She's tired of getting emotionally invested, only to end up hurt. Chae reminds her that Seo Dojin is not Hyunsoo and advises her to enjoy the moment and be smart about it. The conversation takes a turn when Chae mentions marriage, pulling Eunsoo out of her funk. The two friends cheer each other up, making a toast to living their best lives. They laugh and chat, their worries forgotten as they sip their beers and dive deep into relationship talks. Eunsoo flops onto her bed, her mind a whirlpool of thoughts all about Seo Dojin. She's hit the jackpot with him, he's rich, skilled, and drop-dead gorgeous. Just her type. As she daydreams about his perfect image, she finds herself staring off into space. Pondering where she could find another gem like him, she reaches for her glasses, gets up, and saunters over to the mirror. She considers the idea of switching to contacts, especially considering her usual low-key style. Thoughts of Seo Dojin's words earlier make her face heat up in a blush. Cut to the next morning. We see Seo Dojin finally stirring from a long sleep. She's gone, what did I expect, he murmurs to himself as he ambles over to the glass wall with a panoramic view of the city. He feels oddly refreshed, something he hasn't felt in a while. The sudden buzz of his phone snaps him out of his thoughts. It's Mr. Lee on the other end, informing him about an email from a certain Mr. Nicholas. Curious, Seo Dojin reaches for his laptop, wondering why someone would send him emails at this hour. As Mr. Lee updates him on the car preparations, Seo Dojin grumbles about working on weekends and asks about the office turnout. Mr. Lee agrees, highlighting the lackluster office attendance due to a lack of urgent tasks, which is bad for business. Switch scenes and we find Eunsoo in a badass mood, fixing her contacts and finishing up her makeup. Announcing she's off to work, she races out the door, leaving her mother hollering about breakfast behind her. Her mom can't believe it, especially considering how much time Eun spent on her makeup. At the office, it's your usual slow weekend. Eunsoo settles at her desk, unconcerned about the relaxed pace. She feels a bit slimmer and wonders if Seo Dojin is in his office. Tae Kyung, noticing something different about her, asks about her new contacts. She cheerfully explains how the glasses were causing discomfort, especially with her injury. When he asks if she's free after work, she turns him down, saying she has plans with the guy she's dating. Tae Kyung chuckles at her phrasing and urges her to embrace her relationship. Just as Eunsoo is about to respond, Ji-won barges in with a cheerful good morning and the latest office gossip. Apparently, Ms. Kim from marketing quit due to a messy breakup with her boss. Eunsoo is shocked and can't believe Ms. Kim would make such a drastic decision over a minor issue. Ji-won agrees, but adds that office romances are tricky since you're constantly around each other. If things go south, quitting seems like the only option. Eunsoo goes pale, her mind racing with the implications of what she's just heard. As if things weren't bad enough, Ji-won thrusts a document at her, asking her to find some data. Eunsoo declines, saying she's already swamped with work. Ji-won makes a beeline for Tae Kyung, pleading for his help. He's quick to refuse, leaving her in the lurch. Meanwhile, Eunsoo is deep in thought, wrestling with the reality of her relationship with Seo Dojin. She knows it's a long shot. But she can't help but hope. With a sigh, she pushes those thoughts aside and focuses on the task at hand. As dusk settles, we see Eunsoo making a dash for a sleek black car parked in the lot. She hops in as if her life depends on it, sneaking a glance around to see if anyone noticed. "Welcome," he greets her, but her curiosity gets the better of her. She ignores his greeting and instead questions him about his plans for the department store. His curt reply about buying her clothes leaves her stunned. She glances down at her outfit, wondering if it's not up to his standards. He explains that he wants to provide her with some comfortable clothes at his apartment. She counters, suggesting she bring her clothes from home. Their conversation continues as they drive off, fast forward to their shopping trip. As Eunsoo scans the shop, a mini signboard catches her eye. "Household goods" it reads, and her stomach does a flip. Suddenly, their shopping trip feels like something more, like they're a newlywed couple setting up their home. When a noodle soup seller tries to entice them with her wares, Eunsoo decides to give it a try. Her delight is evident as she savors the delicious taste. The seller assumes that Seo Dojin is her husband, creating an awkward moment that he quickly diffuses by grabbing a packet of noodle soup and moving on. Next, they head to the bath and body section. As they browse through the products, Seo Dojin casually asks her thoughts on marriage. Her surprise is palpable as she looks up at him, repeating the word marriage in disbelief. After a moment of thought, she connects the dots to what the noodle seller said earlier. She dismisses the idea of marriage as unimportant. When he presses her for more, she echoes Jaehee's sentiments about the disadvantages women face in marriage. Their conversation ends in an uncomfortable silence. Lost in thought, Seo Dojin admits that he needs to treat her better. His comment leaves her speechless and unsure of how to respond. He breaks the awkward moment by suggesting they leave, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She can't help but wish for more than their contractual relationship. Even as she tries not to get too attached, the ride home is quiet until Seo Dojin extends an invitation to a symphony festival sponsored by their company. She mulls it over, but ultimately declines. He assures her that she can invite him if she changes her mind, but she brushes off his offer, citing his sense of obligation. He disagrees, leaving her stunned. She forces a smile and turns to look out the window, silently cursing the heavy traffic. Back at Seo Dojin's apartment, we find him showing off his culinary skills while Eunsoo sips her coffee. He serves up a dish that elicits a delighted exclamation from Eunsoo. He casually mentions that it's not hard to make, surprising her since she assumed he didn't eat those kinds of noodles. "Get outta here," he chides, but she's quick to call him out on his high and mighty persona. He perks up and quizzes her about how she sees him. She rolls right into it, smoothing over any ruffled feathers. She bursts out laughing, listing off all the versions of him she's heard on the grapevine. At this, he admits it's his maiden voyage with this dish, and she can't help but do a victory dance in her seat. But, true to form, he dishes it right back. She smugly tells him she eats this all the time, sparking a playful debate until he drops the bomb that the product was just released. She gasps when he tells her to focus on her food, a smirk playing on his lips, after quietly enjoying her meal. She's jolted out of her thoughts when he calls her name. He asks about the lawsuit, and she admits it's a tough nut to crack. He offers to lend a hand, sliding a business card across the table. She eyes it thoughtfully, but he reminds her of her earlier refusal, pushing her to give it another shot. She thanks him, her mind spinning. Water droplets echo from the bathroom as Seo Dojin sleeps like a log. Eunsoo gently strokes his hair, surprised to learn of his battle with insomnia. Checking the time, she's shocked at how late it is. As she gets up, Seo Dojin starts thrashing around and grinding his teeth. She panics, calling out to him. Just as we brace for a disaster, she shakes him awake. Out of nowhere, he grabs her hand and presses it to his chest. His breathing evens out, leaving her blushing at the sudden intimacy. Caught up in the moment, she withdraws her hand, but he catches it mid-air. He guides her hand back to his chest, the tremors subsiding as he drifts back to sleep. She pats his chest gently, marveling at her success in calming him down. She's left wondering how he's been coping all this while. The next scene finds our leading lady wandering aimlessly, lost in thoughts about Seo Dojin's condition. This is more than just a bad dream, she muses when her phone buzzes. She hopes it's not Seo Dojin but breathes a sigh of relief when she sees it's Seo Dong-gil checking up on her. She replies, assuring him she's doing great. However, her eyes start to itch, a stark reminder of her fib. She contemplates donning her glasses but recalls Seo Dojin's advice. She texts him about considering LASIK surgery, and he quickly fills her in on the procedure. Fed up with her glasses, she decides to go for it. She shares her schedule for the next day and wishes him good night. A nurse walks in, curious about Seo Dong-gil's cheerfulness. He keeps his reply short, their conversation shifting to night shifts and days off. He tells her he'll be working the next night due to a friend coming in for surgery. Despite her urging him to take the day off, his thoughts are consumed by Eunsoo. He can't wait for the new day to dawn. As the morning sun spills over the towering hospital building, Eunsoo strides towards Seo Dong-gil, who's all smiles and waving at her. He gives her the lowdown on the registration process and suggests they grab a coffee and catch up. She tosses him a grateful smile, acknowledging his help even in the midst of his hectic schedule. With a hint of concern, she asks about his day at work. But he waves off her worry with a grin, reassuring her that he just wrapped up with his last patients. As they chat, they fall into a comfortable reminiscence about their college days. A shared memory of late-night food deliveries to their club sparks a good-natured banter about the extra pounds they'd both put on back then. Seo Dong-gil takes a moment to compliment her, remarking that she hasn't changed a bit since their college days. She's left scratching her head at his random comment, but then he brings up their shared love for Manhwa. Her face lights up at this and she enthusiastically confesses that she still turns to them when things get stressful. But, she admits, her packed schedule lately has left little room for her favorite pastime. Her mind wanders to Seo Dojin for a fleeting moment, wondering if he's awake yet. Seo Dong-gil's voice breaks through her thoughts, nudging her to head to the exam room. As they stroll towards the room, they dive deeper into their mutual love for Manhwa. When they reach the door, Seo Dong-gil thanks her, leaving her puzzled. He smiles, saying, "I always enjoyed reading Manhwa with you," and opens the door for her. In the next scene, we see Seo Dong-gil striding over to the doctor, introducing Eunsoo as the friend he'd mentioned earlier. He quickly fills her in on the procedure, wishes her luck, and leaves. After what feels like forever, the doctor finishes her examination and directs Eunsoo to the next room. She thanks the doctor and heads out, only to be taken aback when she finds Seo Dong-gil comfortably seated in his office. She can't help but ask if he's done with his residency, feeling a bit awkward given they're about the same age. He seems to enjoy her surprised reaction and reveals that he's already on payroll, thanks to his dad being the hospital director. He then gets down to business, scanning her results. She's puzzled when he asks about the speed of the result, and he can't help but gloat a little about pulling some strings to expedite it. After going over her results, he confirms that she's good to go for the surgery. "What a relief," she murmurs under her breath. Seo Dong-gil goes on to explain that she'll be back to her normal routine within a day post-surgery, although it varies depending on the type of procedure. She mulls it over and concludes that every procedure has its pros and cons, but it's something she can handle. Excited at the prospect of ditching her glasses forever, she gives the green light for the surgery. Her joy is short-lived when he tells her they have to wait until her injury heals. It's a minor setback, but she brushes it off, even though she can't shake off the awkwardness as he examines her injury. With a reassuring smile, he informs her that the adhesive will come off soon. He suggests scheduling the surgery on a date that suits her. Eunsoo can't thank him enough for his support. She reassures him when he seems doubtful. He then cheekily suggests she owes him dinner sometime. She takes up the challenge, telling him to hit her up whenever he's free. As she leaves, he can't help but get lost in his thoughts, clearly smitten with her. The next scene has our leading lady, Eunsoo, pondering over her mini calendar, trying to pick the perfect day for her surgery. She's almost sold on Friday until she remembers her impending meeting with Seo Dojin. Her heart sinks a little at the thought. Suddenly, Ji-won's voice cuts through her thoughts, playfully berating her for zoning out. Eunsoo can't help but share her struggle with scheduling everything. Without missing a beat, Ji-won shifts gears and spills the news about a team dinner that night. Apparently, they're all celebrating the success of their last strategy meeting and it's going to be a wild ride. Eunsoo agrees, saying it's high time they had another get-together. Ji-won, surprisingly, hopes for Tae Kyung's promotion. Just then, Tae Kyung enters the conversation, urging Eunsoo not to miss the dinner. She reassures him, even as Ji-won rolls her eyes at their camaraderie. Then, in walks Seo Dojin, deep in conversation with a colleague. He seems annoyed by the noise in the room. The bespectacled colleague speaks up, sharing everyone's excitement about the team dinner. Seo Dojin contemplates canceling it, but one glance at Eunsoo's joyful face changes his mind. He instructs Tae Kyung to handle the reservations. The bespectacled colleague beams as he announces the team dinner. Tae Kyung raises a cheer, declaring Friday night it is. Eunsoo quickly checks her calendar, panicking when she realizes her conflict. She's supposed to help Seo Dojin sleep that night, as the evening draws in. The team settles into a classy restaurant reserved by Tae Kyung. The smell of sizzling beef fills the air, mingling with the team's chatter. Eunsoo can't help but worry about Seo Dojin's absence. When she asks, Mr. Fancy Glasses tells her about Seo Dojin's last-minute meeting. Tae Kyung, ever the life of the party, offers to pour her a drink. Just as she takes a sip, Seo Dojin makes his entrance. She's relieved to see him, especially when he gestures for her to enjoy herself. He even pours drinks for Tae Kyung and Eunsoo. They toast to their team and dive into lively conversation. Ji-won teases Eunsoo about not drinking enough. Seo Dojin encourages her to let loose, reminding her that team dinners are part of work too. As she clings to her drink, Seo Dojin announces it's time to call it a night. Everyone thanks him for the meal and heads out. He instructs them to rest up and be ready for the next day. Ji-won, seeing Eunsoo's tipsy state, helps her steady herself. Seo Dojin mentions the cab he booked for Eunsoo and asks Ji-won to ensure she gets in safely. In the blink of an eye, a sleek white taxi pulls up, signaling it's time for Eunsoo to head home. She's had one too many drinks and doesn't notice her bag slipping off her shoulder. Ji-won steps in, helping Eunsoo into the cab. However, Eunsoo is adamant about getting out again, frustratedly yelling, "But I need to go to Mr. Seo's place." This revelation causes a collective gasp from the team. All eyes inevitably landing on the man of the hour. Seo Dojin, Mr. Suave, keeping his cool, strides over to the cab, assuring a bewildered Eunsoo that he'll be just fine. He tells her not to worry and wishes her a safe journey home. As the cab drives away, she can't shake off her frustration and confusion. She thinks back to the words Seo Dojin said earlier and questions her own feelings towards him. Meanwhile, back at Seo Dojin's apartment, he's taking a warm shower, lost in thought about the evening's events. As he dries off, a notification pops up on his phone. Eunsoo has reached home safely. He feels relieved but also a bit empty, knowing that she was supposed to help him sleep tonight. He reflects on how much she drank at the dinner, understanding her need to let loose. After all, who would want to spend their night helping their boss sleep? It's not exactly a fun task. He can't help but wish she'd accept more from him in return for her efforts. Picking up his phone, he calls Mr. Lee to check in on the progress of the lawsuit against Eunsoo's attacker. As the conversation progresses, Mr. Lee suggests assigning a personal driver to Eunsoo, expressing his concern about not hearing from her. Seo Dojin fills him in on the company dinner and a shocking revelation comes to light. Eunsoo has been going home alone every night after helping him sleep. The news leaves Seo Dojin stunned. Fast forward to Monday morning, Eunsoo's alarm blares obnoxiously, waking her from a well-deserved sleep. She groans, dreading the start of another week. As she gets ready for work, memories from Friday night flood back, causing her to cringe. When she arrives at the office, she's relieved to find it empty. She settles in, hoping nobody brings up the events of Friday night. But her peace is short-lived when Tae Kyung greets her, asking about her ride home. She manages a weak smile in response. Ji-won soon joins them, teasing Eunsoo about her drunken escapades. Eunsoo thanks Ji-won for her help, but Ji-won isn't satisfied until Eunsoo agrees to buy her a coffee. As Eunsoo heads off to fetch Ji-won's coffee, Seo Dojin's arrival freezes them in their tracks. His icy demeanor is intimidating as he instructs everyone to get back to work. He then asks Eunsoo to join him in his office. As they walk away, Eunsoo's mind is a whirlwind of what-ifs and flashbacks from Friday night. The silence in the office is deafening until Eunsoo finally breaks it, bringing up Friday night. But Seo Dojin cuts her off, telling her about what Mr. Lee had shared. His words hit her like a brick, leaving her reeling in shock. Eunsoo stammers out an apology, her fingers nervously twisting in her lap. She tries to tell him not to bother Mr. Lee with something so trivial, but he cuts her off, reminding her how serious her safety is. She's quick to clarify, not wanting him to misunderstand. She knows the situation is serious. It's just that she doesn't think he needs to be her personal chauffeur. But he's not having it. He tells her about the lawyer's call he received late last night and the impending restraining order. His words are firm, almost like a command. She will ride with Mr. Lee, whether she likes it or not. Once he's sure she gets it, he dismisses her from his office. As the door closes behind her, he lets out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Was I too harsh? He wonders, second-guessing his assertiveness. He picks up his phone, making a call to expedite the lawsuit. He insists on getting the restraining order in place as soon as possible. A month later, we see Eunsoo in a meeting with her lawyer. They're discussing the restraining order that's now in effect, leaving the assault charges as the only thing left to tackle. As the meeting wraps up, she thanks her lawyer again, her lips stretching into a relieved smile. On her way back, her thoughts drift to Seo Dojin. She mentally thanks him for his support, promising herself to express her gratitude in person next time they meet. But as she imagines seeing him again, she quickly shakes her head, trying to keep those feelings at bay. Just then, her phone rings. Could it be him? Meanwhile, Seo Dojin is visiting his doctor. She's wearing a white coat, a clear sign of her profession. She's not happy to see him, scolding him for not following her advice about his health. But he's unfazed, casually picking up one of the items on her desk and asking what it is. She takes it from him, playfully slapping him with it. They banter a bit more until he shares some good news. He's been sleeping better, and the pain behind his eyes has subsided. His doctor is surprised but relieved to hear this. She asks about his nightmares, and he mentions that he hasn't taken any pills recently. She then asks about the person he mentioned before, and he nods, confirming he still sees her. But he admits he needs advice about a relationship. Back at the office, Eunsoo is chatting with Seo Dojin. He confesses that he's missed her, but she brushes it off, blaming her busy schedule. He's understanding, telling her to take her time and make a decision when she's ready. Before they hang up, he reminds her of the meal she promised him. They agree to have lunch later that day. In another part of the city, Seo Dojin is pouring his heart out to his doctor, starting with the dilemma of dating. His reaction to her question gives him away, and she can't believe what she's hearing. She points out that he's been around her for a while now, and yet he's done nothing. For now, he replies. She's shocked, asking him how Eunsoo feels about all this. He admits that while she seems comfortable, it pains him to see her uncomfortable around him. The doctor points out how unapproachable he can be. He tries to deny it, but she doesn't let him off the hook. He's taken aback by her words, reflecting on past interactions where he may have come off as too harsh. The doctor, on the other hand, is fascinated to see this softer side of him. Seo Dojin, trying to shake off the silence, asks his doctor what women might find attractive. She teases him, saying he's dated enough women to know. But Seo Dojin is quick to defend himself, pointing out that Eunsoo is a different breed altogether. She's not like other women. She doesn't accept things from him easily, and honestly, he wishes she would. If only wishes were horses indeed. His doctor, ever the professional, offers him some advice on winning Eunsoo over. Seo Dojin can't help but feel a pang of sadness. It's clear she doesn't see him as anything more than a patient. And the fact that Eunsoo probably isn't interested in him either? That hurts the most, but there's a silver lining. His doctor believes he's finally met his match in Eunsoo, and she encourages him to make a genuine effort. He needs to figure out what Eunsoo truly likes before it's too late. It's going to be a challenge, she admits, but one he might actually enjoy. Later that day, Eunsoo is strolling down a walkway when Seo Dojin spots her. He compliments her dress and points her toward the restaurant he's chosen. As they near a Manhwa cafe, Eunsoo wonders how she's supposed to treat him to a meal at a cafe. But Seo Dojin assures her that great meals await. Once inside, Eunsoo is amazed by the spread in front of her. She finds it hard to believe that people come here to read, not eat. They strike up a conversation about book clubs, instant noodles, jjajangmyeon, and their shared love for food. Seo Dojin recommends a particular dish, and Eunsoo agrees to try it. As she does, she can't help but notice the comfort she feels around him. After polishing off her meal, Eunsoo pats her belly, amazed at how much she ate. Seo Dojin asks if she's on a diet, to which she admits she's been gaining some weight. He starts to offer her advice, but she interrupts him, spotting an old Manhwa series. Excited, she suggests they stay a bit longer to read. Seo Dojin is more than happy to oblige. As night falls, they decide to call it a day. As they walk home in the crisp night air, they reminisce about their fun-filled day. Eunsoo admits she lost track of time, laughing and enjoying herself so much. Seo Dojin agrees, saying time flies when you're having fun. Eunsoo can't stop talking about their day, prompting him to ask if they could do it again sometime. Later, Seo Dojin finds himself reminiscing about his college days. He remembers a senior student who once asked him why he studied so hard as a freshman. The senior pointed out a girl who was always studying in the same spot. She seemed like a freshman too, and he wondered what it was about freshmen and their dedication to studying. Just then, the senior's phone beeped and he had to leave. But Seo Dojin stayed, watching the girl engrossed in her book. He couldn't help but smile at the sight. Seo Dojin's fascination with Eunsoo is straight out of a romantic novel. You know the type, where the guy can't help but obsess over the girl. Ever since Sunbae introduced her to him, she's been on his radar. Every move she makes, every book she reads, he's there taking mental notes. It's a bit much, even for him. One day she forgets her novel, and he calls out to her, only to be met with a chorus of snickers and side eyes. Undeterred, he picks up the forgotten book and realizes it's a Manhwa novel. No wonder she's always engrossed in her reading. Curiosity piqued, he dives into the story and is surprisingly hooked. The guy who once thought Manhwa wasn't his thing is now a fan. Talk about a plot twist, his newfound interest is interrupted when Eunsoo reappears asking about her book. He stammers out an explanation, mentally kicking himself for getting caught. But instead of being upset, she's thrilled to find someone who shares her love for Manhwa. She piles more books on him, insisting he read them all. He protests, but she's not hearing it. And before he knows it, he's devoured every last one. As they sit reading together, he can't help but steal glances at her. She's even prettier up close. And when she catches him staring, he quickly looks away, pretending to be engrossed in his book. They chat about their favorite Manhwa, and he admits that he used to read them as a kid until his dad found out and put an end to it. She sympathizes and invites him to join their reading group whenever he wants. Fast forward to the present and Seo Dojin can't deny his feelings for Eunsoo. He asks her again about joining the reading group, and she agrees enthusiastically. His heart flutters at her response, but he tries to play it cool. The scene shifts to Eunsoo and her friend thanking Seo Dojin for driving them home. As they part ways, he takes a moment to congratulate himself on a job well done. But his victory is short-lived when he gets a call from his dad. With a sigh, he tells his dad about the girl he's been seeing. The next scene shows Eunsoo in Seo Dojin's house, visibly tense. She regrets coming empty-handed, especially since he's done so much for her. When he enters the room, she quickly snaps out of her thoughts. She declines his offer for a drink, wondering why he's acting so strange. Later, as he showers, he reflects on his doctor's advice. He knows he needs to overcome his anxiety around Eunsoo, but it's easier said than done. As the day draws to a close, Seo Dojin finds himself wide awake, his mind racing with thoughts of Eunsoo. He wants to be better for her, and it's keeping him up. Meanwhile, Eunsoo is lost in her own world of thoughts. In an uncanny moment of synchronicity, they both start speaking at the same time. He lets her go first, and she thanks him for everything he's done for her. His heart swells as he takes in her gratitude. It feels good to be appreciated. He tells her he's always there for her, ready to lend a hand whenever she needs it. Time goes by, and still, sleep eludes him. Eunsoo asks if he's having trouble sleeping, and he admits, "I don't think I can sleep anymore." Her heart skips a beat at his admission, and she can't help but fear that she might somehow be a burden to him. The ticking of the clock fills the silence, its rhythmic sound punctuating his confession about his recent bouts of insomnia. He suggests they step out and enjoy the cool night breeze, and she breathes a sigh of relief. She's not a burden, after all. In the kitchen, he offers to make her a cup of coffee. She's surprised, knowing his aversion to caffeine. But he insists, wanting to treat her properly this time around. He makes the coffee like a pro, leaving her impressed. He jokes about being a natural, even though it's his first time making coffee. They retreat to the living room, sipping their coffee in silence, the city lights twinkling outside the window. She expresses concern about his caffeine intake, but he reassures her, saying he'll be fine as long as she's around. Flushed and flustered, she quickly finishes her coffee, while he takes his time, savoring the taste. His mind wanders to a hypothetical future without Eunsoo. But he quickly dismisses the thought. She's a part of his life, and he wants it to stay that way. The silence stretches on, punctuated only by their thoughts. To break the ice, he suggests they watch a movie. She agrees, and they settle on a popular blockbuster. As the movie plays, he moves to sit next to her. She's a little shy, and so is he. Words fail him, and even when the movie ends, he struggles to start a conversation. He glances at Eunsoo, only to find her fast asleep. He gently wakes her up, suggesting she move to a more comfortable spot. But she just mumbles something in her sleep. Looking at her peaceful face, he can't help but ask himself, is this what happiness feels like? And for the first time in a long while. The answer is a resounding yes. When he tucks her into bed, his heart is pounding like a drum in a rock concert. He's mesmerized by the sight of her, especially that little smudge of cappuccino cream on her lips. He wipes it off, but then he's caught in a moment, just inches away from her lips. It's practically an accidental kiss. But he pulls back, mentally scolding himself for even thinking about it. He places her glasses safely on the bedside table and gently pulls the covers over her before leaving the room. Yet, as he walks away, he can't shake off that strange urge he felt earlier. Maybe I should try something different, he mutters under his breath. Time ticks by, and our sleeping beauty eventually stirs. She blinks, trying to make sense of her surroundings. Her mind is a whirl of questions, but the answers are hazy. Restless, she calls out for him and starts wandering around the house. Eventually, she stumbles upon a door with faint sounds coming from behind it. As she opens her mouth to speak, what comes out is more like a gasp when he swings the door open. His toned physique is impossible to ignore as she takes in the sight. He casually drops his weights, asking her how her night was, but she's frozen, speechless. It's only when he calls her name again that she snaps back to reality. She blushes furiously, creating an awkward silence. Not sure what caused her sudden change in demeanor. He wonders if it's because he dropped the weights. He starts explaining that they're not heavy, but she interrupts him, rushing to check if his feet are okay. His smile broadens as he assures her that lifting weights is a piece of cake for him. Wanting to prove his point, he flexes his muscles and lifts the weights easily. She's visibly impressed, her eyes going wide as he subtly brags about his strength. As he grabs a towel to wipe off his sweat, she gets a full view of his chiseled back. She's torn between calling him a model or something more fitting when he interrupts her thoughts, asking if she just woke up. She's mildly annoyed that he let her sleep so long, but he counters that he didn't want to disturb her peaceful slumber. She apologizes and he suggests she tries lifting weights. She protests about her outfit, but he reassures her, explaining which muscles the exercise targets. As he guides her, their hands brush against each other. Eunsoo's heart skips a beat and he promises to take it easy on her. After a few reps, Eunsoo gives up, declaring she's done. He encourages her to take a short break and try again, but she insists she's not up for it. He teases her about her lack of muscles, and then offers to be her personal trainer. She declines, saying she needs to go home. He tells her it's too late and offers to drive her, but she stubbornly refuses. Not wanting to argue, he tells her to wait while he showers. The steam-filled bathroom is a sure sign that he's taking his time, trying to sort out the unfamiliar emotions he's feeling, all while hoping Eunsoo doesn't find out. In the next scene, Seo Dojin, looking effortlessly stylish in his casual attire, tells Eunsoo, who has been waiting for what feels like forever, to grab her bag. They head towards the elevator, and the silence is palpable. Out of the blue, he mentions them living together. She's so taken aback that she can't even close her mouth. Seeing her reaction, he quickly clarifies, suggesting it would just be more convenient, but she squashes that idea immediately, insisting she can't. He goes along with it, passing it off as a random thought. The elevator arrives, and they step in, the silence returning. Eunsoo breaks it, expressing concern about his sleep habits. He suggests going back to his apartment, but she hesitates, not comfortable sleeping anywhere but home. She can't help but connect his moodiness to her inability to help him sleep. Even when he talks, she's lost in her thoughts. As if he can read her mind, he asks why she seems upset. She admits feeling guilty about not being able to help him sleep, especially since she fell asleep herself. His heart sinks when she refers to helping him as her job, thinking they were dating, but then she accuses him of not really liking her, and he fires back, saying he wouldn't ask someone he didn't like to date him. Their argument continues until she says something that catches his attention. She tells him there's more to dating than just hanging out, and he asks her to explain. The actual affection two people have for each other, she blurts out. He moves closer, resting his hands on her waist, and asks if that's what she meant. The tension between them is electric, their lips inches away from each other. Eunsoo's eyes are wide open, full of uncertainty, her heart pounding. But just as they're about to kiss, her phone rings. She fumbles for it in her bag, but he tries to stop her from answering. When she sees it's her mom calling, he lets her take the call. Her mom sounds worried and tells her to come home soon. After the call, Seo Dojin walks ahead, leaving Eunsoo alone with her thoughts. She wonders if he's upset about the call, but decides not to make a big deal out of it. The drive home is quiet, and she's relieved when he finally speaks. He asks about her plans for the weekend and suggests they go on a real date. Although surprised, she agrees and heads inside her house. Left alone, Seo Dojin reflects on his actions, wondering why he can't take things slow. Meanwhile, Eunsoo is in a corner, trying to process everything that just happened, a blush creeping up her cheeks from the excitement. Walking through the front door, Eunsoo is greeted by her worried mom who's been waiting up for her. Eunsoo can't help but question why her mom isn't in bed yet, especially since she had stressed the importance of her mom getting a good night's sleep and not waiting up for her. But her mom insists that she needed to see Eunsoo before going to bed. They chat for a bit until the topic shifts to Hyunsoo. The constant nagging irks Eunsoo slightly, but she spills the beans about their official breakup. Her mom's elated reaction takes her by surprise, especially when her mom drops the bombshell about setting her up on a blind date. Eunsoo's scream echoes through the house. Eunsoo's mom is convinced that this mystery man is perfect for Eunsoo. However, Eunsoo is less than thrilled about the idea. even as her mom tries to make light of the situation. Escaping to her room, she leans against her door, her mind wandering back to her encounter with Seo Dojin. She shakes herself out of it, reminding herself to stay focused. Fast forward to the day of the date, Eunsoo lounges on her bed, reveling in the sunlight filtering into her room. "What a beautiful day," she mutters just as her phone buzzes. Expecting Seo Dojin, she's disappointed when Jaehee's name flashes on the screen. They chat and joke about Seo Dojin and the impending blind date. After hanging up, Eunsoo scrolls through her call history, wondering if Seo Dojin has forgotten about their plans. Right on cue, her phone buzzes. Seo Dojin's name lighting up the screen. She quickly clears her throat, trying to sound as feminine as possible. They confirm the time and place for their date, and he insists on picking her up. Before she can argue, he hangs up. She debates calling him back but decides against it, choosing to get ready instead. She rummages through her wardrobe, mentally cursing him for not telling her where they're going. After discarding several options, she settles on a stunning floral gown. While doing her makeup, she wonders if she's overdoing it. She contemplates wearing glasses but decides against it. As she tiptoes into the living room, hoping her mom is asleep, she's startled by her mom calling her name. Her mom questions her about where she's going, and she lies about going to the movies with Jaehee. But her mom is suspicious, especially given Eunsoo's dressed-up look. To avoid any further questioning, Eunsoo makes a quick exit, even as her mom brings up the blind date topic again. Outside, Eunsoo ponders over whether her mom knows about Seo Dojin. Realizing she still has some time before her date, she decides to kill time at a nearby cafe and texts Seo Dojin to pick her up from there. A few minutes later, she's sipping her coffee and people watching when a car pulls up right in front of her. Annoyed, she moves to a different spot. Suddenly, the cafe door chimes and everyone turns to look. Curious, Eunsoo follows their gaze, wondering if a celebrity just walked in. To her surprise, it's Seo Dojin, casually walking in like he owns the place. As she starts to question him about the message she sent, he walks past her, leaving her stunned. Eunsoo calls out, "Mr. Seo Dojin," into the bustling cafe, causing heads to turn in their direction. A blush creeps up her cheeks from the attention, and she makes a mental note to chat with him privately later. He strides towards the counter. His silence and intense gaze on the cashier stirring curiosity in Eunsoo. As he places his order with an air of nonchalance, Eunsoo watches from one of the chairs. She can't help but notice the cashier's lingering gaze on him, stirring a twinge of jealousy within her. Casually picking up his drinks, Seo Dojin saunters out, leaving the cashier calling after him. Seizing this chance, Eunsoo darts out of the cafe, catching up with him by his car. She knocks on the window, eliciting a surprised reaction from him. "How did you know this was my car?" he asks, to which she simply grins. He hands her a cup of coffee, and with a swift move, pulls her into the car. The sudden action leaves her gasping, and she hastily buckles up for the ride. An awkward silence fills the car, punctuated by the tension between them. When he places his hand on her thigh, she's unsure how to react. Trying to defuse the situation, she asks if he's feeling sleepy. His slight flinch and quick retraction of his hand tell her she's hit a nerve. Clearing the air, he explains that it was just a casual gesture since it's their first official date. She quickly apologizes, realizing she may have misunderstood his intentions. In the midst of the awkward atmosphere, he expresses his desire for a more personal nickname. Caught off guard, she asks him what he'd prefer to be called. With a mischievous smile, he tells her it's her decision. Deciding to postpone the discussion, they focus on the journey ahead. As he speeds down the road, Eunsoo clutches the seat, pleading with him to slow down. But his response is a casual, "Cars were made to go fast." Before she knows it, they've arrived at an amusement park. They skip the long ticket queue, thanks to their pre-purchased tickets. As he helps her with her wristband, she stammers out, "Thank you. Dojin." He asks her to repeat it, his face lighting up at the sound of his name from her lips. He insists she continues to call him that, his cheeks flushing slightly, entering the park hand in hand. Seo Dojin's excitement is palpable. When she asks if it's his first time visiting an amusement park, he admits to only having been once as a child. However, he quickly reveals it was all a joke, and they share a laugh. Spotting a fun train ride, he convinces a hesitant Eunsoo to join him. Despite her concerns about the long queue, their VIP wristbands allow them to bypass the wait, much to her surprise. And just like that, their amusement park adventure begins. Eunsoo and Seo Dojin score front row seats on the roller coaster. The moment the ride lurches into motion, their hands instinctively find each other, fingers interlocking in a tight grip. They holler at the top of their lungs, legs trembling with the thrill. As they stumble off the ride, Eunsoo breaks into a grin, exclaiming, "That was insane." Seo Dojin laughs, suggesting they brave the ride once more. But she playfully declines, reminding him she frequents the park to unwind, not get an adrenaline rush. They venture to another ride, which turns out to be terrifying yet exhilarating. Their amusement park escapade lasts till sundown, their laughter and chatter echoing through the park. As they prepare to leave, Seo Dojin thanks her for an unforgettable day. He admits that she's helped him tick off several items from his bucket list, including trying coffee and visiting an amusement park. His excitement about spending more time with her is palpable as he takes her hand. Before they exit the park, he suggests one final ride, the Ferris wheel. He teases her, asking if she's scared, but she confidently shakes her head. As they descend from the Ferris wheel, Eunsoo is ready to head home, but Seo Dojin insists they stay a little longer for the fireworks display. As the first firework bursts into the sky, Seo Dojin trips, nearly pulling Eunsoo down with him. But she steadies herself, and they end up locked in a heated stare. Seizing the moment, Seo Dojin pulls Eunsoo closer and kisses her softly, the fireworks providing a stunning backdrop to their intimate moment. After the fireworks, they stroll down the street, sharing a juice box. He seems parched, eagerly accepting her offer for a sip. As he drinks, Eunsoo can't help but admire him. Wondering how someone could be so handsome even while sipping juice, as the night deepens, she suggests they head home. She asks if he's okay with missing the parade, and he assures her it's fine. They walk hand in hand to his car and he drives her home. In the car, Eunsoo proposes that she try helping him sleep again. However, he declines, explaining he needs to regain control over his sleep routine on his own. Understanding his decision, she agrees. Once they reach her place, he escorts her to her apartment door, a small gesture he admits he's always wanted to do. As she steps inside, he bids her goodnight, a content smile on his face. Inside, Eunsoo's mom notices her flushed cheeks and feels her forehead. Concerned, she asks if Eunsoo is sick. Eunsoo dismisses her worries, attributing the fever to work stress. Just as she's about to close her bedroom door, her mom brings up the blind date again, revealing she's shared Eunsoo's number with them. Exhausted, Eunsoo sighs in frustration, closing the door behind her. As she collapses onto her bed, the events of the day replay in her mind, a smile playing on her lips as she drifts into a peaceful sleep. In the quiet solitude of Seo's cabin, sleep is an elusive companion. He tosses and turns, his dreams a jumble of disturbing images. Then, a vision of a beautiful woman appears, her soothing presence bringing him peace. It's Eunsoo. With a start, he wakes up, half expecting to find her beside him. But no such luck. Damn dreams, he mutters, blaming the sleeping pills he'd taken earlier. Checking the time, he realizes dawn is breaking. Resigned, he remains in bed, lost in thought. As the morning sun winks through the office windows, everyone is busy at their desks. Eunsoo, however, can't help but glance towards the door every now and then. She's waiting for him, wondering what's keeping him. She tries to focus on her work, but a sudden wave of dizziness hits her. Brushing it off as fatigue, she heads to the kitchen for a coffee boost. Chae joins her, immediately noticing her pallor. He places a hand on her forehead. Concerned. Are you coming down with something? He asks. She dismisses his worries, attributing her condition to exhaustion. But he persists, pointing out her flushed face. He suggests she take the afternoon off, but she brushes him off. Instead, she uses the opportunity to inquire about Seo Dojin. Tae Kyung fills her in on Seo's morning meeting and assures her he'll be in soon. Just then, Seo strides past them with a group of suited men, deep in hushed conversation. As Tae Kyung continues briefing her on Seo's schedule, Eunsoo finds herself comparing the serious, work-mode Seo with the fun-loving, carefree Seo she'd spent the day with. It all feels surreal. Evening rush hour rolls around. And Eunsoo contemplates texting Seo about heading home. But before she can, she receives a message from him asking her to meet him in the parking lot. Her heart skips a beat. Inside his car, they share their feelings for each other. He invites her over for dinner, and she happily agrees. Back at his apartment, Seo wastes no time. He pins her against the wall, removes her glasses, and leans in close. Always the gentleman, he asks for permission before closing the distance between their lips. But as their lips meet, he pulls back, concerned about her feverish skin. He panics, berating her for not taking the day off. In her defense, she admits she wouldn't have been able to see him if she had. His reaction is priceless. He's dumbfounded. Recovering from her confession, he leads her to his bedroom. In the bedroom, Eunsoo's flushed face is a stark contrast to her usual complexion. Seo checks her temperature, shocked at how high it is. He questions how she managed to act so normal despite being sick. To lighten the mood, she teases him about their near kiss earlier. Seo forces a laugh, asking her to stop teasing him. He confesses he's finding it hard to resist her, especially with her looking so vulnerable. Her eyes widen in surprise, the brown depths reflecting her mixed emotions. Seo Dojin informs Eunsoo that he's stepping out to grab some porridge and medicine. It's not that bad. She protests, but he quickly cuts her off. Either she's eating the porridge or getting in for her choice. Eunsoo goes silent at that. He then asks if she'll be okay alone for a bit. She nods, and he seals it with a quick peck on her forehead, promising to be back soon. Once he leaves, Eunsoo lets out a deep breath. Her mind races with questions. Why is she always leaning on him when he's the one grappling with insomnia? How could she not know she had a fever? But then she realizes, maybe it was because she was too excited to see him. Exhausted, she drifts off to sleep. When Seo returns, Eunsoo stirs awake, propping herself up against the bedstand. He presents the food he's brought. And she reaches to take it, but he insists she rest. As he serves her, she can't help but blush. The food is delicious, and she digs in heartily. She notices he hasn't brought any food for himself and asks why. I'm not really hungry, he replies, urging her to finish her meal. She finds it odd because she doesn't remember him eating the previous night either. Once she's done eating and has taken her medicine, Seo wipes her forehead with a cool, wet cloth. As he does so, he apologizes for not noticing her sickness earlier. He's been so wrapped up in work and other things that he failed to see her condition. I'm just glad your fever has subsided, he says, continuing to wipe her face. His touch elicits a smile from her, making him quickly pull his hand away. He lays the cloth on her forehead, patting her head gently, and tells her to recover soon. As he gets up to leave, she opens her eyes. He whispers for her to get some more sleep if she needs it, but she feels well rested already. He was here the whole time, she wonders, suddenly remembering the time. Eunsoo checks her clock and panics. It's late. She jumps out of bed, hastily getting ready to go home. Seo protests, reminding her she's still unwell. But she insists she's fine now. My mom must be worried, she explains. He offers to drop her off, but she declines, suggesting he rest instead. Despite her protests, he insists on driving her home. I can do anything for you, no matter how hard. He assures her. Returning home, Eunsoo's mom is immediately concerned. When asked what's wrong, Eunsoo brushes it off as a minor cold, apologizing for the late hour. Her mom understands, reminding her of the challenges of working for others. Unbeknownst to Eunsoo, her mom has been arranging blind dates for her, believing this will lead her to a better life with a stable man. Little does she know about Eunsoo's growing relationship with Seo Dojin. As the sun dips low in the sky, Eunsoo wakes up from her sleep marathon with a stretch that would rival an Olympic gymnast. She marvels at the fact that she slept through an entire day, something that would have been unheard of on any other workday. She remembers Seo Dojin's words from their ride home and how he helped her overcome her fever. Deciding to make the most of her unexpected day off, she settles back into bed for some quality self-care time. She watches a movie that ends with a fairy tale-esque happy ending, wiping away pretend tears as she gives her head a nice rub against her pillow. As she debates what to watch next, her phone buzzes. It's a message from Seo Dojin. Their conversation starts off with casual inquiries about her health and when she plans to return to work. But then, he drops the bombshell, "I miss you." The text sends a rush of heat to her face, turning her as red as a ripe tomato. She struggles to come up with a response, finally settling on a simple "me too," before hitting send. His reply is a curt goodnight, which irks her. Just as she's about to drift off to sleep, her phone rings. It's him. Seo Dojin apologizes for the late-night call and reminds her of a promise she made to help him fall asleep. He asks if she can fulfill that promise tonight, adding that he's right outside her house. The news sends a jolt of excitement through Eunsoo. She quickly gets dressed and heads for the door, only to be stopped by her mother. Her mother questions her late-night escapade, and Eunsoo quickly lies about going to see Jae. Despite her suspiciously dilated pupils, her mother lets her go, handing her a bowl of kimchi for Jae. Eunsoo wonders if Seo Dojin likes kimchi as she steps out to meet him. Their meeting is charged with anticipation. Eunsoo explains the origin of the kimchi, which delights Seo Dojin as he was planning on having it for breakfast. Their eyes lock, the air between them crackling with unspoken desire. In the next scene, Eunsoo is taken aback by the spread of food on the table. Seo Dojin approaches her with a bottle of wine. She questions when he had time to prepare everything, but he merely pours her a glass of the sweet wine. As she sips it, she asks about its origin. He shares a brief history, all the while maintaining eye contact. Overwhelmed, he sets down his glass and leans in, capturing her lips in a passionate kiss. He suggests they move to the bedroom, to which she eagerly agrees. The next morning, they wake up to the chirping of birds, basking in the afterglow of their shared intimacy. Eunsoo panics when she checks the time, waking Seo Dojin in the process. He suggests they play hooky and spend the day together, setting the stage for their budding romance. There's still more to discover in this beautiful manhwa. Want us to continue? Please let us know in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao.